One terrified, Lu Yi never imagined a simple game could become a matter of life and death. But reality was incredibly cruel, forcing him to watch his beloved sister Yun get ruthlessly run through by their enemy. She did not even have time to comprehend the sudden, fatal blow as blood spilled from her mouth. The cold-blooded murderer felt absolutely nothing, focused entirely on his own ruthless victory. He took his prize, leaving the desperate brother with a shattered heart. The bloodthirsty beast wanted even more. Tears streaming down, Lu Yi realized. He had completely failed his sister, filling his soul with crushing guilt. The blade was raised again, and Lu Yi searched for his mistakes. How did everything end like this? He had no answers left. The cold steel plunged deep into his back, triggering a wave of pure agony. And to think this nightmare started because he treated everything as a joke. Now he lay dying in a growing pool of crimson right beside her. He looked at the lifeless body of his little sister, still frozen in shock. Tears still stained her pale cheeks, capturing her final, terrifying moments. If only he had taken the system seriously from the very beginning. After losing their parents, his sole dream was raising Yun to be happy. He worked tirelessly, wanting only to provide her with a bright future. The game was just an escape. No one expected the virtual world to merge with their physical reality. This sudden fusion plunged the entire world into an unprecedented crisis. Rules vanished and monsters roamed. Humanity was left completely defenseless. Lu Yi absolutely loathed this chaotic world where everything changed overnight. Beside him, his sister's killer laughed, savoring his cheap triumph. Lu Yi tried to stand, his heart burning with pure self-hatred. He despised his own weakness and his foolish, casual attitude. But most of all, he loathed the sadist who murdered his sister. Suddenly, the smug killer felt a freezing presence rise behind him. He spun around slowly, the wicked grin instantly dying on his face. There stood Lu Yi, covered in blood, looking like a feral demon. With a primal roar, he delivered a massive blow to the head. The heavy strike sent the killer stumbling, completely losing his balance. Clutching his head, the man screamed at the sudden, foul stench. He had been hit by actual waste, yet Lu Yi just smiled. He collapsed onto the dirt, savoring this petty but satisfying final strike. The furious killer cursed him, enraged that a weakling dared strike back. Yet a tiny spark of determination flickered in the dying boy's eyes. Deep inside, he vowed that he would somehow protect his sister Yun. But the cold, sharp blade fell anyway, ending his struggle. The high-level killer refused to let a weakling have the last laugh. Then darkness, until the dead Lu Yi suddenly gasped in shock. He was breathing, the noisy, familiar hum of city streets echoed. Loudspeakers announced that the Primordial Kingdom would launch in 8 hours. Sitting up, the stunned young man wondered how this was possible. He was slaughtered by a level 20 assassin, yet here he stood. He suddenly woke up. He was back in his high city apartment. Unbelievable, he thought this place was demolished over 3 years ago. Suddenly, a knock on the door. His sister calls out to him. The game operators are here. The official launch has actually begun. He immediately perks up. That voice is instantly recognizable. His charming sister, Ian, enters. She asks where to put the boxes. Confused and shaking, the young man asks her for the exact date. Ian sighs. Did he get up on the wrong side of the bed? She tells him it is July 27th, a completely stunned Lu Yi realizes he is back in 2030. She asks why he even asks. He does not answer. He leaps out of bed and rushes to the window. Staring outside, everything looks strange. The city skyline is massive. He looks into the distance, carefully scanning the towering skyscrapers. Shock washes over him. He has returned back to the very beginning. This is the exact day the legendary Primordial Realm first launched. Gathering his thoughts, Lu Yi looks directly at Ian, standing right there. He pulls her close. In his mind, he makes a solemn vow. This time, no mistakes. He will become the absolute strongest player. On September 1st, the virtual game will completely merge with reality. Everyone will gain their game powers, but the villains, they become gods. Brutal, endless wars will erupt over absolute dominance and wealth. Luyi was just a weak, low-level researcher who died in that nightmare. But miraculously, he has regressed right back to the start. He swears to become the strongest player. But Shy Ian is not too happy about this sudden, tight hug. Awkwardly, the young man scratches his head and freezes right in place. He has no words, only 34 days remain before the merger. There is no time to waste. He must start intensive training immediately. In this incredibly short window of time, he must build massive strength. Otherwise, he will just be another victim, so he logs in. Lying on his bed, wearing his VR gaming headset, he is focused. He decides to fully invest in raw power upon entering the game. Meanwhile, other players in the realm are already testing their strength. A massive warrior swings his heavy blade, demonstrating a basic strike. This simple attack sets a perfect baseline for what is next. Then, without a moment of hesitation, he channels raw power into the swing. The resulting shockwave is absolutely devastating, leaving everyone speechless. The crowd is in awe and watching from the stands. Is Luyi studying every detail? Suddenly, the countdown begins. When it hits 0, the system welcomes him to the primordial realm. Power is the ultimate stat, separating top-tier warriors from commoners. But here, everything truly comes down to raw weapon mastery. Knowing this, Luyi decides to head straight for the training pavilion first. The critical foundation of any strong player lies in weapon skill. If he can reach 100% mastery, things get wild. Only patience and hard work would let a player truly master this power. Within minutes, Luyi arrived. He stepped inside the training room. He looked around. A small digital screen popped up right in front. "Choose your weapon," the system prompted. The calm youth smiled. He picked his favorite. The katana was always his weapon of choice. Unsure of what fit him best, he spent 5 hours testing everything. Time flew by. Suddenly, a notification popped up on his screen. He had successfully achieved 100% mastery. Incredible. Ready for more, he immediately prepared to choose his next challenge. Grabbing a heavy sword, he took a firm stance at the simulator. Outside, a couple of players were talking about their wild experience. One guy was incredibly curious about what high-level rewards they could unlock. But his red-eyed female companion grew suspicious upon seeing the strange building. Assuming that it was a weapons pavilion, she walked straight inside. Hearing faint noises, she looked forward in surprise. She wanted to see exactly how this intense training was going. Soon they spotted Luyi. He was absolutely drenched in sweat. Still, he gripped his blade with immense, unshakable confidence. The brunette immediately pointed out that there was nothing interesting to see here. A couple of other guys also stepped up to examine the weapons. But it took only seconds for them to grow completely bored. They threw the iron toys down. Such a waste of time, they complained. To them, grinding weapon skills was useless without getting active abilities. With no cool powers to gain, they turned to leave. They left to focus on levels, but the girl cast one last curious look. Get this, on day 1, Luyi mastered the katana, swords, and halberd. Yet no power arrived. He was still empty-handed on day 2. He fully mastered the spear, axe, shield, and heavy hammer next. Still nothing, yet the stubborn warrior absolutely refused to quit. While training, he overheard some high-level players walking past. It stung knowing that in just 3 days, other players had achieved so much. All of them were leaping ahead, while he remained completely stuck at level 1. He briefly considered leaving to gather some experience points. But he clenched his fist. He refused to give up now. His ultimate goal was simply far more important than fast levels. True strength was the foundation. He had to obtain it. To become the absolute strongest, he had to build a perfect base first. Meanwhile, a red-haired player was complaining loudly outside. He whined that dying cost too much, ruining 2 days of hard grinding. And would you believe it, his companion noticed Lu Yi was still at it. The sheer dedication shocked her, but Lu Yi ignored them. He kept practicing, his movements were completely focused and silent. The guy suggested trying it themselves to see what the deal was. But his companion scoffed. She claimed she could destroy anyone in one strike. To her, this slow training hall was only meant for absolute fools. Leaves barely a scratch, the brunette writes him off as a nerd, deciding not to waste her time here. She tells her companion that during this crucial window, they need to focus on leveling up instead, dragging him away before he can even try the gear. Meanwhile, after mastering 18 weapon types, Liu Yi unlocks the master title. This epic perk lets him wield every single one. Right then, our hero is absolutely drenched in sweat, gasping for air after some brutal training. The stressed-out fighter still has no idea where his true strength is. Even after perfecting every traditional blade, he starts to think that maybe guns are his real calling, but in his past life, before he got reincarnated, he had never actually seen a single player use firearms effectively. He wonders if only high-level players can unlock their true latent potential. A few moments later, he steps inside the pavilion, immediately spotting a massive display packed with all sorts of weapons. Gripping a sleek handgun, the determined youth realizes his rivals probably hit level 30 in just 3 days. At this rate, the Primordial Kingdom will conquer the world long before he can master every firearm, making him seriously doubt his chosen path. Then, Liu Yi remembers the horrifying day when the enemy slaughtered his sweet sister, leaving him to bleed out. He cannot quit now without raw, absolute strength. He will never stand at the top. Failure is not an option. Unleashing a relentless barrage of gunfire at the targets, he vows to keep pushing forward. Meanwhile, a curious girl quietly starts tailing our focused protagonist, whispering to herself that she just wants to observe him for a bit. Staying hidden, she peers around the corner and suddenly tenses up. Sensing something is off, she realizes the guy has vanished from sight. But she keeps searching to track him down. Wait, what was that? Her eyes almost pop out of her head in absolute shock from a deafening, thunderous gunshot echo through the halls. Gathering her courage, she slowly climbs the stairs, ready to bolt at any moment. She finally reaches a hidden training room and spots an incredibly intense Liu Yi standing there. Gasping, she covers her mouth in total disbelief, wondering what this bizarre guy is up to. Right then, a game alert pops up. He has unlocked the power of resurrection. After giving it absolutely everything he had, now, our reborn warrior feels incredibly calm about the coming apocalypse, fully prepared to face it. A smug, badass grin spreads across his face, looking completely unstoppable. Next up, the blue-eyed fighter decides it is finally time to go level up and close the massive gap with everyone else. His stats are currently pretty low, but his gun mastery and new power are completely broken. Suddenly, the sharp Liu Yi spots a random girl lingering in the doorway, staring right at him. She immediately tries to hum a tune and act casual, though she is doing a terrible job of hiding it. Blushing hard, Shin realizes this good-looking warrior is staring right into her soul. In her mind, Shin tells herself to snap out of it and just ask him what is going on, but she gets completely tongue-tied, realizing she will have to investigate this mystery on her own. Liu Yi heads off to the local shop to buy a proper handgun and ammo, knowing swords simply will not cut it. Would also come in handy. Meanwhile, a red-haired boy in the chat asked his sister where she was because they needed to go rock climbing. She quickly replied she was currently hanging out in the arsenal. He asked what she was doing, and Shin bluntly texted back, weapons training. Soon after, other players began discussing how the Firstborn Kingdom had just reached 10 million active online players. Meanwhile, Liu Yi went inside a local store and bought a cheap dagger, pistol and basic ammo for 1,000 win. stunned by the steep prices. He realized he had absolutely no other choice, so he quickly approved the digital transaction. Now he held some pretty decent close combat weapons, which only added to his cold look. His special master tier ability let him bypass the usual power restrictions that normally required very specific weapons to activate. In the Mirror Realm, players could pay a small fee to create a perfect clone of themselves, forcing rivals to battle against it. Winning this matchup meant they could claim currency directly from the gold reserve, but losing meant they lost their stakes. A bigger gold reserve pushed a player much higher on the official tournament leaderboard. To enter the fight, each challenger had to be 5 levels below the clone and pay 10% of the opponent's total savings. Confident in his skills, Lu Yi felt this arena was perfect for him as a level 1 fighter with a broken ability. Suddenly, a nearby voice grumbled about another crushing defeat. The frustrated guy sounded almost close to tears, whining that the mirror copies were way too overpowered. This caught Lu Yi's attention. The weeping stranger deeply regretted ever entering the mirror arena, and his buddies agreed, reminding him that this brutal game strips away all your gear. Nearby, 2 other players sat mocking the newbie with the cheap gun, but Lu Yi completely ignored their smirks. An ash-haired man whispered that this rookie was their perfect target, since a total beginner would easily lose the battle. Meanwhile, keeping a completely calm face, Lu Yi quietly began sliding his finger across the glowing digital screen to register himself. Completely focused, he easily navigated the interface without running into any issues. Suddenly, a prompt asked if the fighter was sure he wanted to challenge a player's mirror copy, as he needed this fight to gauge his current strength. Then, painful memories flashed back of elite players laughing directly at his pathetic weakness. Honestly, he had no interest in fighting seriously, partly due to time, but mostly because of a deep, paralyzing fear of combat. Even now, his knees shook violently, yet pushing through the dread, he clenched his fist and firmly tapped the confirmation button. He paid the 100 win entry fee, immediately starting the swift process of warping directly into the mirror realm. A 10-second countdown flashed on the screen, and he could see his potential opponent waiting right in front of him. He was facing a level 5 opponent who carried a basic katana and wore default starter gear, which did not pose much of a threat. Still, this was the first time in his life that he was willingly stepping into a battle, and his nerves were absolutely crushing. His knees wouldn't stop trembling, making it hard to even stand up, but he had absolutely no intention of backing down. With only a couple of precious seconds remaining on the clock, he firmly gripped his shaking thigh. Lu Yi felt a sharp sting of pain as his brutal opponent immediately charged. The copy swung a glowing crimson sword, catching the disoriented boy completely off guard. Summoning his remaining focus, Lu Yi opened fire with his pistol to turn the tide. But the bullets did absolutely nothing against his incredibly agile and fast opponent. The cold-blooded shadow closed the distance instantly, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. With one swift, devastating slash, the copy disarmed the young man, sending his gun flying. Staring into his opponent's chilling, relentless eyes, Lu Yi froze up in pure terror. But he refused to give up. Moving fast, he grabbed his trusty dagger. He raised the blade just in time to block a lethal finishing blow. His body spasmed violently, ruining his coordination. Still, the young fighter gritted his teeth and held his ground against the pressure. He asked himself what he was even running from, desperately trying to find his courage. Destiny didn't give Lu Yi a second chance at life, just to let him die of fear. Realizing this, he focused. Tightening his grip around the dagger's hilt, he prepared to launch an all-out counterattack. He activated his weapon master skill, causing the stats of his blade to surge. He charged right in. He swung the blade with brutal precision, showing his mirror image absolutely zero mercy. His professional title managed to bypass the usual level restrictions in this system. but non-pistol attacks only dealt half damage. Still, the system soon flashed a massive notification congratulating Lu Yi on his victory. He pocketed 1,000 yen and watched his level shoot up by 4 entire tiers. But despite the sweet win, Lu Yi was annoyed that his leg wouldn't stop shaking. Nearby, 2 calculating spectators discussed the game's brutal, seemingly psychotic battle system. The gray-haired man chuckled, admitting it was built specifically to weed out weaklings. He smirked, noting how brutal it was, which is exactly why they needed top-tier players. Sweating and exhausted, Lu Yi returned. The green-haired guy stared in absolute disbelief, his jaw dropping to the floor. He couldn't believe that the level 1 rookie they had just ridiculed actually survived. And he did it completely unequipped. His partner Ganza grinned, and trust me, he knew a golden opportunity when he saw one. He immediately ordered his lackey to go fetch the latest betting odds out back. The minion quickly rushed back, reporting that they had received an immediate reply. Ganza waited for his move. Once they knew his target, they could place their bets with total confidence. Meanwhile, Lu Yi pulled up his status screen. Even so, his thin, exhausted legs were still trembling like crazy from the adrenaline. He muttered to himself that he either had to conquer this fear or die trying. In a bold move, he set his sights on a formidable level 55 opponent. He chose to summon a copy of that high-level beast, taking a massive gamble. He instantly dove right back into battle. Ganza watched in absolute awe, completely caught off guard by the kid's insane guts. He and his partner glued their eyes to the screen to witness the madness. Suddenly, their smirks turned to pure horror. Rubbing his eyes in disbelief, the blonde could only wonder if he was hallucinating. But his comrade confirmed the worst. The kid really chose a mirror copy of the 10th level GMA. The sheer shock makes the ash-haired man lose his footing and tumble to the floor, leaving his panicked friend scrambling to revive him. This stunned spectator just cannot understand why the kid picked the absolute strongest boss when there were 100 other clones available. Clutching his hair, the green-haired Buddy desperately asks what is going to happen to their bet, tears streaming. Ganza groans that since the match is officially requested, they are forced to bet. On the first level wildcard, over on the betting page, it is already open to choose between the newcomer, Eshin, or Danson. Everyone assumes the fool has entirely lost his mind by rushing into a fight against the strongest clone. Honestly, who can blame the crowd for wanting some easy cash? Everyone drops their wagers without a single second thought, desperate. Ganza and his buddy weep openly as the grand total stacks up to 200,000 yen, heavily favoring Thunder. Clenching his teeth, the guy wonders how they will survive this mess, finding zero answers. Meanwhile, Liu Yi and Deng Chong face off in the grand arena, locking eyes in a tense stare-down. Soon the timer begins ticking down, with our rookie fighting to keep his composure and avoid any critical blunders, but his leg keeps shaking uncontrollably, and this weakness absolutely infuriates the proud young warrior. In a flash of rage, he stabs his own thigh with a dagger since his patience has completely evaporated. Instantly, blood pours from the fresh wound, dripping right onto the tip of the steel as if to steel his resolve. The grim rookie looks his formidable opponent dead in the eyes, keeping his loaded handgun raised and ready. At last, the match is officially underway, sending the daring challenger charging forward to end this clash in a flash. But his veteran opponent easily parries the strike to deny an early opening. Refusing to let his guard down, yet Eshin refuses to back off. Suddenly, Thunder disarms the stunned boy with a brutal swipe, capitalizing on his momentary misstep. Next comes a deadly slash, sending our young fighter into a state of extreme panic and distress. Fighting the terror, he forces a calm mask back on, struggling desperately to keep his emotions in check, gripping his blade. The agile fighter barely slips past the lethal swing, completely unscathed. His sharp reflexes and natural agility save his life, but celebrating now would be foolish. Without losing a beat, the kid leaps backward to analyze the situation and plan his next move safely. He stands tense, keeping his guard up to prevent any more critical mistakes, with his health bar dangerously close to empty. The rookie can only play defensively and pray for a miracle. Meanwhile, on this other side, his opponent has not sustained a single scratch on his entire body, sending a chill down the young warrior's spine. Drenched in sweat, he realizes he bit off far more than he could ever hope to chew. Now he wishes he picked a slower, much weaker target to battle, but regret is completely useless now. His leg keeps trembling, but he absolutely refuses to run away and braces himself to strike, gathering every ounce of his remaining strength. The determined rookie charges forward with a fierce glare, though it does not faze his unstoppable foe. He keeps telling himself to keep pushing, moving constantly to avoid becoming a sitting duck. Gritting his teeth, the desperate challenger begins to. He twisted and dodged every which way, refusing to let the giant even touch him. And he was doing pretty well, but suddenly, Luya tensed up and warily gazed to the side, sensing a threat nearby. Meanwhile, the ruthless Don Shan leaped high into the air, swinging his sword to slice his foe into pieces. But by blocking the strike just in time, the warrior saved himself without taking a single scratch. An impressive feat. Over and over, the young man pushed through the danger, finally managing to win this brutal clash. Completely exhausted, Luya finished off the giant, having spent almost all his energy. But he still passed the trial. Soon, the copy's body dissolved into light, and the young warrior reminded himself that this was the only path to reach the absolute top. To achieve his goal, for his victory, the system awarded him 15,000 and an equal number of points, which pleased him greatly. Then he froze in place with weapon in hand, pulling up the digital screen to review his personal stats. Right now, our protagonist had reached level 13, and all his other attributes were steadily rising. Letting out a heavy sigh, the determined fighter quietly realized that it was time to select his next opponent. Reaching level 10 had also unlocked the powers of restoration, rebirth, and invasion. Right then, a terrified Ganza and his buddy screamed at the crowd to back off, terrified of getting beaten to a pulp. Tearfully, the blonde guy offered to forfeit and surrender right now, giving up half of their betting winnings, but with a smug grin, the spectator wearing glasses warned that they would not be getting off that easily. A young man asked if they truly believed they had won. Then another man scoffed, asking if anyone seriously thought Thunder could lose to a complete novice. If the giant's mirror copy actually lost, he would eat a pile of garden fertilizer. But against all odds, the leaderboard suddenly marked Don Shan's name with a stamp of total defeat. Seriously, nobody saw this coming. The shock left everyone speechless as the truth finally sank in. A green-haired kid cheered happily that they won, pointing and laughing at those who had doubted them. Now a smug Ganza got back on his feet, loudly reminding everyone about all the big talk the losers had been spouting. He let out a deafening victor's roar to scare the doubters, while his partner simply laughed at them from the side. Meanwhile, the quiet Luyi stepped away from the arena, completely ignoring their petty drama. He had just received brand new abilities, but even the system's explanation failed to clarify their actual purpose. Out of nowhere, the main character's little sister burst into the room to announce that evening had arrived. And it was time for dinner, but he kept thinking about the Primordial realm, which offered two distinct skills, one to heal and another to destroy. He pondered which to select, since one boosted raw damage while the other could become incredibly useful once the game inevitably merged with reality. If that happened, it would easily be his most overpowered skill. Besides, Luye would soon face far more deadly foes inside the Mirror Kingdom. The smart fighter realized that a solid regeneration skill would make it much simpler to build his own faction. Chewing on his food, Luye He finished his mushrooms, said he was full, then left the table to handle his business. His sister asked if 1 cup was really enough, and he replied it was plenty. Surprised, the girl kept eating, but she could not stop thinking about him. Her thoughts kept drifting back to her brother. Suddenly, a memory flashed in her mind. She remembered how he had held her close, almost like they were a couple. She decided she needed to find him a wife as soon as possible. Lately, he was starting to feel far too dangerous to be left alone. Meanwhile, a blond man was tearfully begging Ganza to show some mercy. He pleaded for just a little money back, but Ganza refused to budge. Lying there, the mohawked man cried that it was his family savings, and losing it would destroy him. Ganza just mocked him, pointing out how he rejected the deal earlier. Only a minute ago, he wanted no part of it, yet now he begged for those same terms. Suddenly, an outsider crashed the party, grabbing the kid by the face. A massive hand clamped down over his face with brutal, sudden force. The giant slammed the kid's face into the floor, shocking the man with the monocle. Jai Guang, the ruler of the Mirror Kingdom, coldly made his stance clear. This arrogant brat was going to pay back every coin the level 10 Thunder lost. The terrified kid immediately recognized this powerhouse as a member of the elite. New Order Guild, a group you do not cross. Meanwhile, the old man started to make excuses, claiming he only opened the bet and had no idea about the fighter. He never expected anyone to pick the clone of the great Dan Shan. Jai Guang warned him that they would have a very different conversation in the real world. Ganza had tried to be clever, but now he was pinned against the wall. The terrified kid offered to return every single coin he had won this time. He begged for forgiveness, tears streaming down his face as he desperately swore that he had absolutely nothing left. Suddenly, Jai Guang released his grip, looking deep into the boy's terrified eyes. He only wanted one thing from him. He needed his help. Meanwhile, Lu Yi finished eating and logged right back in. He immediately accepted the system prompt, eager to claim his next major power. Yes, he wanted to obtain the power of the Flame of Restoration. Instantly, his combat system hummed to life with an incredible new notification. The system awarded Lu Yi a special double-attribute private title. Several of his key stats suddenly surged past the 100 mark. This was insane, especially since his basic stats were only at level 13. But with this massive bonus, his overall power now rivaled level 26. Now Lu Yi wondered, could he actually take down the mighty Thunder? That opponent was already at the 20th stage, but a smile touched his lips. This was the perfect chance to test his newly acquired power. Without hesitation, the confident warrior agreed to enter the arena against Dan Shan. Ready to tear him to pieces, and trust me, the community absolutely lost it. Players were shocked that the newcomer Lu Yi defeated a master with a simple pistol. Some complained because they bet their money on the veteran and lost. Some comments called Lu Yi a complete beast, unable to comprehend his insane victory. They wondered who even opened the bets on him, but the cunning Ganza had bet 300,000 on the rookie, leaving everyone else to cry. Ignore him and pay the price, his nervous friend asked why he went so far. He was only supposed to stir up trouble, yet the guy was absolutely sure Shane would take the win. The blonde sneered, claiming Jai Guang could not lay a single finger on him anymore. Even if he dared to try, the new order would never offer him any backing. His partner questioned the whole point of this show, if nobody was actually betting on the rookie. But his ally replied that at the very least, he got everyone second-guessing. Nearby, a spectator with a monocle wondered who to trust after losing everything last round. By now, the fighters had already split to opposite sides of the massive arena. Standing inside the Mirror Kingdom, they waited in silence for the opening bell. Armed with dual katanas and heavy armor, Fierce Thunder exuded pure, overwhelming power. On the other side stood player Liu Yi, equipped with just a basic pistol and a dagger. He wore nothing but standard starter gear, yet his focus was razor sharp. Armed with his past life memories, he knew he could predict his enemy's exact movements. One perfect strike would end this. Then, the system announced the match start. Instantly, his brutal opponent lunged forward in a blinding, aggressive rush. With dual attributes, the massive gap in their strength had completely vanished. Liu Yi felt a surge of pure confidence, high-level opponents. Fighting them would not be nearly as terrifying as it was in his early days. He had grown immensely stronger, and it was time to show the fruits of his labor. Now check this out, he points his weapon right at his charging enemy. Bullet fire and screaming metal echoed through the arena for several intense minutes. But he loved every second of it. Ready to wrap things up, his opponent suddenly shifted. The giant flashed a terrifying grin, sending chills straight down his spine. He growled out a chilling warning, "Die like the fool you are." How dare some weak-level, one rookie attempt to stand against his absolute might? The heavy pressure crashed down, sending a sudden shockwave right through him. Liu Yi's face paled instantly. He froze mid-step, caught completely off guard by this twist. Only pure, desperate instinct saved him as he leaped backward just in the nick of time. He narrowly dodged the lethal sword slash, flipping backward through the air. Landing on his feet, his mind raced to comprehend what just happened. Why did a sudden memory of his worst nightmare flash before him? The image of the exact scoundrel who murdered him in his past life flooded back. His aggressive momentum died instantly as his legs began to tremble with terrifying familiarity. Was he truly terrified of death? Was the fear of dying again paralyzing his body? There was no other explanation. He could not accept being this weak. How could he ever control his own destiny if simple fear broke him so easily? He leveled his gun at the enemy once more, refusing to yield to despair. He would break through his limits, his sharp eyes narrowed with dangerous resolve. Meanwhile, the merciless fierce thunder braced himself, ready to deliver a final, crushing blow. No more games, he was going to end this instantly, while our rookie crouched low. Bending his knees, Liu Yi primed his legs for a swift, explosive counter lunge. At blinding speed, the mirror image tore forward, but the young warrior stood firm. Braced for impact, he weaved and dodged with pure mastery, keeping death an inch away. Slipping cleanly past every single swing, he knew he couldn't afford to slip up. His focus remained icy cold, desperate to avoid becoming easy prey for his opponent. Eshin waited, seeing his chance. He lunged and grabbed his opponent. He slammed the gun barrel right against his throat. He forced him down. Under his breath, Eshin whispered his truth. He whispered to himself that he had grown up, changed, and would never quit. A single gunshot echoed through the hall. Eshin was officially a new man. The system announced victory over Dawn, granting Eshin huge rewards. Massive amounts of experience points and gold flooded his inventory. In the quiet lobby, he opened his stats screen to recover. Eshin had evolved. He was now miles ahead of everyone else. The lounge erupted in absolute, stunned silence as they watched him. Nobody could believe a complete rookie had pulled this off. Some of them began shouting that Eshin was their absolute god of wealth from now on. Others wept openly, bitterly regretting that they had not backed the new hero. For many of them, financial ruin was guaranteed, and their tears flowed freely. Gansu jumped around in pure, ecstatic joy over the win. Even his rival Guan had lost everything backing the other guy. Everyone now knew the rookie was a monster, possessing power that was real. His power was undeniable, but could he handle what came next? He could only fight level 30 spear warriors now, where rewards were massive. Gansu's companion quietly asked if Eshin would be in serious danger up there. Eshin ignored the noise. His focus was entirely on the future. He was far ahead, but the next challenge was different. He had to kill a perfect, high-level clone of himself. An invincible mirror image stood in his way. Other players scoffed, calling this mirror matchup a literal suicide mission. But those warnings did not stop Eshin, who calmly prepared for the battle. Whispers spread about how the guild used this monster to dominate. The system prompt flashed, asking if he truly wanted to enter the arena. Would he challenge the level 30 copy of Danson? With absolute confidence, Eshin accepted and was immediately transported to the battlefield. The gambler Juwang smiled, quickly opening the betting pools. He knew he would make a killing off the desperate crowd. Gold flooded the pools as desperate players risked it all. A green-haired spectator warned the crowd that Eshin had no chance of survival. He urged everyone to put their money on the unstoppable force of Danson. Smiling, Gansu admitted the massive risk, but still put his wager on Eshin. Across the field, Danson stood tall, clutching a lethal and powerful katana. His iron defense was a wall, good luck breaking that. Eshin quickly dumped all his free attribute points into intelligence. He needed his mental power to safely cross the 100 threshold. The system confirmed his stat boost, and the epic duel was officially open. At that exact moment, the clone vanished, reappearing right behind the frozen warrior. Eshin froze, his health bar plummeted in a single strike. The aggressive clone kept pressing hard, but Eshin refused to let this end. He resisted to his absolute limit, desperately searching for a path to victory. He makes a titanic effort to stay on his feet and keep his balance. His hands tremble, but they still carry immense force. He channels that powerful energy straight into his sword, looking to strike. His chains suddenly push the clone back, freeing his hands. He fires without hesitation, looking absolutely terrifying. The mirror image stands firm, but the non-stop shots put him in danger. With no time to catch his breath, he keeps his focus locked on. He stays sharp, no room for distraction. His passive regeneration keeps him in the game, but the pressure remains intense. He spreads his arms wide, opening himself up. The opponent lands a brutal punch directly to his stomach, catching him unprepared. Drenched in sweat, he struggles to survive. No panic, he twists and dodges every oncoming strike. His desperate evasion works, letting him successfully slip away from the deadly onslaught. Soon, he manages to put some distance between himself and Dong Shan's spear. Now he has a brief window to make a choice. Though his stats match level 46, the Thunder clone still overpowers him. Relentless pressure, yet the cool-headed Yi Xing keeps analyzing the situation. He frantically brainstorms a way out. Meanwhile, his emotionless opponent stands perfectly still, waiting for him to move. The young fighter realizes that if the enemy is already at maximum power, he still has a real shot at winning this seemingly impossible duel. Now he must choose his path and unlock the class blessing. This will upgrade his title to Assault Trooper and boost his parameters. Lacking the raw level, he decides to overwhelm the clone with sheer attributes. He pays 400 knowledge points, boosting his stats by 200%. For the next minute, Yi Xing is endowed with incredible, godlike power. A sly smirk plays on his lips as absolute confidence fills his chest. His mind is set on absolute victory, and you can bet he is ready. Within the 60 seconds he has left, he intends to crush the clone. The copy launches a fierce counterattack, but the brave warrior stands his ground. He fears absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, onlookers whisper that a low-level beginner, possessing only basic gear, cannot possibly defeat such a high-ranking opponent. But if he somehow wins, it will prove his talent is unmatched. It will prove he has the hidden instincts of a legendary warrior. With that, the young fighter raises his pistol and begins firing rapidly. At first, the shots miss as his nimble opponent zigs and zags. The target is incredibly hard to hit, but Yi Xing keeps his composure. He waits for the perfect opening and pulls the trigger once more. The bullet strikes the copy right in the chest, freezing him instantly. Fully focused, Yi Xing keeps firing to lock in his victory. Dong Shan is riddled with bullets, proving his absolute combat precision. It looks like the threat is finally over, but he cannot relax. The observant Yi Xing keeps his eyes glued to the fallen body. He knows this is not over, and soon enough, the copy begins to move. With no other choice, the battle continued. The brave warrior quickly realized that his internal attributes far, far exceeded those of the ordinary players in the arena. He also possessed a passive skill that triggered at death. This was his ultimate edge, rendering him completely unkillable, and the entire mirror system actively worked against the other fighters. Lu Yi had already declared himself to be the one and only exception. So his opponent stopped talking, aiming to finish the match once and for all. The reckless young man was curious. Would his blessing run out first, or would Dong Shan's legendary power to cheat death prevail in the end? At that moment, the relentless gunfire erupted again, fueling the young hero's confidence. Only 25 seconds remained before his temporary ability expired. But that was still plenty of time. Lu Yi promised himself he would not lose here today, especially with massive rewards on the line for conquering his past limitations. The brave fighter was ready to crush this fake copy. An opponent unable to control his own fate, the fearless warrior kept telling himself that he was growing stronger daily, believing that absolutely no one could defeat him. One could ever defeat him. The gunfire did not pause for even a single, solitary second. Only 10 seconds remaining of his blessing. In those final moments, one final, incredibly fast bullet was unleashed, flying directly toward his opponent, Thunder. The small projectile slammed directly into the mirror copy's helmet, sparking absolute rage inside him. Dong Shan lost his balance entirely, dropping his sharp sword on the floor. As his legs began to give out, just a few seconds later, the massive brute collapsed heavily onto the cold floor, showing absolutely no signs of life. Finally, the cool-headed hero secured a clean victory over his high-level opponent. The shocked crowd finally realized that he possessed incredible hidden potential and strength. One onlooker noted that those elite fighter titles had absolutely nothing to do with ordinary people like them, since they existed in completely different worlds. A young man in a striped shirt explained the expert's true level. He pointed out that they were all like tiny ants crawling at the very bottom of things, unable to compete with him in any way. Meanwhile, completely calm and deeply satisfied, Lu Yi opened his system screen to check the notifications. He breathed a sigh of relief as the system congratulated him on finally defeating the mighty Thunder, rewarding him with massive experience points and currency. His combat strength instantly jumped by 2 whole points, which was an excellent result that put him in a great mood. Back in the main lounge, Jiang clenched his glass with such fury that it shattered into tiny pieces. The stunned brute growled that this was absolutely impossible, but the bitter reality could not be denied. A man with a mohawk began scanning the entire room with glowing pink eyes, activating some special skill. Soon his pupils shifted to a cold, calculating blue, his next move entirely unknown. Overjoyed by the result, Ganza and his buddy celebrated their win, realizing they had just made some serious cash. The blonde boy grinned, reminding them of his words that he told them to always trust his gut with these bets. His companions warned that it was too early to celebrate, suggesting they log off immediately to stay safe. At that very moment, Lu Yi was back in his room, finally deciding to take a break from the game. His younger sister knocked on his door, figuring he was hungry, and offered to grab him some noodles. The confident young man said he made a ton of cash today, so he decided to treat her to some barbecue. Soon, the two began heading down the stairs, feeling totally relaxed in each other's company. They laughed nonstop, completely forgetting about everything else in the world, and yet only 25 days remained before the Primordial Kingdom would take over. A day later, the hero made an online purchase that would take 2 entire months to deliver. This made the young man incredibly frustrated because there was barely any time left before the world changed forever. The nearest shop did not have the item he needed either, leaving him worried that Yun would never become a player. The stressed young man concluded that he had to work even harder to protect his loved ones. At that moment, his sister and her best friend, Huang Nyana, walked down the street sipping drinks. The blue-eyed girl asked why her friend had called her out and if something serious was going on. The sister wanted to introduce her to her brother, hoping for a match since she came from a good family. If they got engaged, everything would be perfect. Smiling sweetly, Yun claimed she just missed her and asked about their other friend, who had been completely silent in their work group chat. The scheming sister silently plotted to make Huang Nyana her brother's girlfriend, even if she already had a boyfriend. Her friend tried to speak up, but she could not even form a proper sentence. Suddenly, she blurted out that her parents forced her into playing some online game, making her miserable. This confession completely shocked her friend, who froze in place, completely speechless. Talk about a sudden bombshell. Meanwhile, the wicked Guan, who had hit rock bottom, raised his hand against his girl because he wanted her support, but he got absolutely nothing. Then the insolent jerk brutally shoved the helpless woman away, causing her to fall and injure her shoulder. The cruel scoundrel even started kicking her for daring to show him any pity. Nearby bystanders just watched, whispering about how terrible he was, but not a single soul dared to help her. An enraged Guan screamed at them, demanding to know what those pathetic onlookers were whispering about. The terrified crowd instantly realized they were in deep trouble. In a total panic, they knew standing around would only make things worse. The entire crowd turned tail and fled just to save their own skins. The furious man glared at them and spat on the ground, but did not bother chasing them down or wasting his energy. Just then, his phone rang, and he answered, demanding to know if his associate located the target's address. Getting a disappointing no, Guan snapped, shouting at the top of his lungs, asking what he was even paying the useless idiot for. But before he finished, the informant quickly explained the situation, calming the serious-looking thug down. The man asked if he was certain this method would succeed. The punk promised that the moment they tracked down Ehane, he would transfer the remaining cash for the job. Meanwhile, our main character headed right back into the training mirror dimension to push his limits. The highest tier of mirror phantom clones was 30, and with his current beginner tier as a fighter, he stood zero chance of advancing deep into this zone. Turning his head, the calm warrior continued. Pondering his immediate options, he realized he would have to keep grinding in the ruined kingdom, but suddenly he froze dead in his tracks. The young man realized he desperately needed to upgrade his equipment since he couldn't progress far with his current loadout. Soon, he found himself in a crafting workshop, hoping to find some decent gear for his build. The level 20 green gear cost 20,000 UN or 24 royal essences. Louis' expression was completely blank at the absurd price, making him abandon the notion of purchasing it. Instead, the warrior headed straight back to the ruined kingdom where he could quickly farm the materials to craft his own gear. He had enough money, but he needed those funds for real-life expenses and absolutely refused to waste them. Before long, he arrived at the new area, confident that he could quickly fix his low-level gear problem without wasting any time. Right at the entrance, he spotted a massive crowd of players, most of whom were actively recruiting members for raids. One player mentioned that 3 elite groups from the New Order Guild had wiped during a raid. Talk about a total disaster, getting completely reset and losing all their valuable items. His companion added that a single survivor had claimed the ultimate bounty of the ruined kingdom after betraying and slaying all his teammates. Once inside this brutal dungeon, players were completely locked in until they cleared it, which explained the insane rewards. With his current strength, Louis was easily capable of clearing a level 30 raid, and he assumed finding a party would be a breeze. But the very first leader he approached turned him down immediately, saying they only wanted high-ranking elites. His next try was another failure because the leader scoffed at his low-tier gear. The final recruiter rejected Louis too, leaving him pale with disbelief while saying they didn't want any useless newbies. Frustrated, Louis protested that he had already defeated a high-level boss, insisting he was far from being a weakling. He realized he would have to grind up from the absolute bottom to upgrade his current gear, which felt like an incredibly annoying chore. Right then, as the annoyed young man accepted his grim reality, someone nearby stamped their foot. A booming voice suddenly called out to him, saying they were missing just one person for their party. A smiling warrior named Guan added that thrilling raid was ready for them, but they desperately needed to recruit a 10th member. The red-haired youth confidently stated they had plenty of firepower to handle the dungeon, but they couldn't unlock the quest without a full team. Surprised, Louis thought. He had definitely seen this guy before, but the memory remained completely blank. Not wasting any time, the leader warned that if the quiet kid kept hesitating, they would find someone else. Snapping out of it, Louis smiled and confidently declared that he would happily tag along with them, seeing this as a great opportunity. Guan, the red-haired leader, gestured for him to follow as they still needed to gather the rest of the squad. Louis didn't object and silently tagged along, listening to the plan while hoping everything would actually go smoothly. The raid on the ruined kingdom was nestled far beyond the Mushu Mountain range, and ordinary players with low funds couldn't teleport directly into the central city. Only those with high-tier stats could access the ancient teleporter within the ruins. Kingdom, taking a good look at everyone present, the observant Eshin silently concluded that the players in this party were absolutely loaded. The first thing that caught his eye was their shiny gear, which looked incredibly expensive. Shocked Hero realized this armor meant more than half of the players' inventory was absolutely top tier. One of the fighters urged them to move on, claiming he wanted to reach level 40 today. His bald comrade said they would have to swap out their equipment, and his partner replied he was ready to trade 3 pieces of his set for a weapon. After that, the elite warriors led by Jiyuan headed into the portal, while weak Liu just trailed behind, completely doubting he would be of any real use. A few seconds later, a glowing blue crystal materialized in the dry desert. Upon exiting, a teammate instantly noticed the exact challenge they now faced. A flag defense raid. The dead Sirius commander ordered everyone to immediately surround the stone and defend it at all costs. He threatened that any slip-ups letting a monster through would be paid directly for out of their own pockets. The calm hero just looked around, not even knowing how to act. He stood completely still, staring at the shining crystal as if completely mesmerized. Suddenly, a system alert popped up showing the task was loading. As the gates began to close, their actual task was to defend the core stone through 3 waves and prevent its health from hitting 0%. Staying focused, Eshin read the text and started listening closely as some bizarre noises began to echo. The young man realized that the beasts were closing in, meaning he needed to prepare for combat right away. He squinted into the horizon, but ahead of him were thick clouds of orange fog. Seriously, talk about worst-case scenario. Then they faced a massive swarm of terrifying spiders, their razor-sharp fangs glinting in the dark. The venomous monsters charged ahead, highly eager to destroy the crystal and end it fast. The bald fighter smiled and told the newbie to stand close or risk getting brutally bitten. Feeling concerned, he promptly listened. The strong man grabbed a huge halberd and began to swing it hard to push back the onslaught. He shouted with titanic effort, completely boosting his battle spirit. One sharp, massive swing. Several spiders were instantly torn completely to shreds. Another massive warrior was just as ruthless, relentlessly slashing the bugs. The rest of the team displayed total composure, handling their enemies with ease. Instantly, thick dust flew everywhere. The calm Liu Yi stood silently near the crystal, watching them fight. In his mind, he noted their incredible teamwork. These battle-hardened guys clearly worked together for ages. Team Captain G led the charge directly, fighting right alongside his team with great courage and relentless ferocity. Suddenly, the tactical battle commander locked his gaze onto a teammate clearly planning something devious. That friend quickly returned the look, establishing a silent connection that suited them both perfectly. The cunning Jiwon appeared to signal something silently with a sharp expression, all while keeping a completely straight face. With a sharp grin, his partner made it clear he understood, even if their intentions remained a total mystery. Suddenly, a terrifying, multi-toothed spider lunged straight at him. 3 terrifying rows of sharp teeth. The fighter barely had any real time to react to the attack, throwing himself to the side and narrowly escaping any real harm. Standing close to the glowing crystal, our hero instantly spotted the danger, completely unbothered. Kept his cool completely. A panicked teammate screamed at him to defend. The stone, yet a relaxed smile, played on the calm boy's face as he watched. Quietly noted that despite their decent teamwork, their actual strength was barely on par with a typical low-level player. He decided to show them what he could do, drawing his blade to slice the beast cleanly in half. The cold-blooded warrior muttered that these pathetic humans were no match for the Thunderbolt. The system announced that the first wave was successfully cleared, warning that the next swarm would arrive in 10 minutes. The fallen monsters slowly dissolved into thin air, a pretty fascinating sight. Finally getting a chance to rest and catch their breath, the group sat down in a tight circle right in the scorching sand. One of the fighters remarked that nobody would ever guess he was such a powerhouse just by looking at him. Yosha shyly rubbed the back of his neck and smiled. Another teammate sighed, saying if only their former ally Shio Fen had not vanished so abruptly, their defenses would have been absolutely perfect, preventing any foul beast from ever getting near him. The bald-headed warrior eagerly invited Yosha to hold the line with them, confident that together they could easily block any incoming threat. The skilled, silent swordsman sitting beside the quiet youth even suggested bringing his own brother into the party to fill the empty slot. The dark-haired warrior mentioned he would not need to search for random recruits to build his own crew, and once they built synergy, they could easily tackle high-level raids. Excited by the prospect, Liu Yi praised the brilliant plan and seemed ready to sign up, but Yosha did not rush to agree. Instead, the clever fighter raised a hand, looking over at Jigyuan, asking for his opinion on the matter. The boss coldly replied that the boy had to share his phone number and home address first, supposedly so they could keep themselves safe. He blamed it all on the recent incident with the traitor, but Yosha simply stayed quiet, processing the odd request. The leader continued, explaining how hard it was to secure rare gear, which led to their traitor deserting them and leaving them struggling against the beasts. A deeply thoughtful Liu Yi agreed, fully understanding the weight of the situation, which played right into the group's hands. The sketchy members of the team silently traded knowing glances, and you just know they are up to no good. Concealing a faint smirk, our protagonist asked if inviting him on a joint raid was truly their goal. Noting their bewildered expressions, he pointed out how incredibly strange it was. Out of all the available fighters waiting inside the lobby, they specifically targeted him. Yosha also brought up how, the moment they joined the fight, they deliberately let the spider break through just to test his actual combat power before offering him a permanent spot. To top it off, they immediately tried digging for his actual home address, which was beyond sketchy. The sharp young man easily figured out what Jai was up to. Guang ruled the Mirror Kingdom as the powerful leader of the New Order Guild. Guang had heard whispers that this stranger tricked the boy who once defeated Thunder into handing over his secret address, and the kid was never seen again. Confident in himself, Liu realized that the clever commander had finally recognized his true strength after defeating Donan and now wanted him dead. The crimson-eyed bandits quickly exchanged silent looks, realizing their target knew too much. Their cover was blown. Every single fighter stood completely still and quietly plotting a way to end this threat, but their boss, Guang, just glanced over coldly, refusing to let things slip away. Faking a clueless smile, the balding Guang chuckled and played completely dumb, claiming the young man had the wrong guy. Meanwhile, another recruit realized he had been totally fooled as the bandits dropped their friendly act. There was no point in faking it anymore. A red-haired thug glared, holding back his burning rage to keep himself from lashing out. Still, his fists clenched tightly, a clear sign of impending violence. A massive brute stepped forward and towered menacingly right over the young player. He stared down with a murderous look, but Lu did not flinch. The bully sneered, asking if this cocky kid could actually take on 9 fighters. The furious swordsman roared that Lu was nothing but a shameless brat, suddenly slashing his blade downward without a single second of warning. Immediately, Lu spent 30 points of knowledge power to boost his attack. By a massive 1500%, suddenly a heavy counterstrike smashed straight into the attacker's face, making him stumble and drop his weapon. This sudden blow shocked the nearby trio, who expected an easy kill. Nobody believed this kid could take out a veteran with one shot. Before their eyes, the defeated swordsman dissolved into light, leaving only pure experience points. Within seconds, his entire body was completely gone. Only a tiny, completely harmless speck of dust lingered on the ground. A rare loot item called the Blue Pearl dropped from his corpse. Lu smirked, asking what made killing 9 men so incredibly hard. His sheer confidence and mocking tone drove his enemies absolutely wild. Guang gritted his teeth, itching to erase this brat from existence. With a single nod, the entire gang charged at him together. Striking from every angle, they could not land even a single scratch. Lu honestly hated taking lives, knowing a player's level directly affected their survival. By putting them down here, he was stealing their real-world future. But in this brutal game of life and death, he had to survive. There was no alternative. Lu knew his current strength was simply too weak. He could never protect his sister when the primordial realm finally invaded. To save his world, he had to eliminate every future threat today. These scoundrels had to die before they could grow any stronger. Lu resolved to step over their bodies and climb to the top. He would reach the peak, but suddenly a familiar spasm hit. His leg shook violently, failing him at the worst possible moment. The brutal enemy instantly noticed his trembling leg, realizing his weakness. There was no emotion or fear in his eyes. In fact, his face became even more serious as his determination skyrocketed. Stunned, Guan wondered how they failed to kill him despite having much better gear and higher levels. Sweating with anxiety, the nervous enemy advised the young man to stop, warning that losing another player meant they would fail. To clear the dungeon, the brave man wanted to reach the secret mirror zone and pull off the same trick, but they lacked the necessary power and skills, meaning their equipment would also vanish. Enraged, Guan threatened that he would gather a mob to block him from entering his desired target zone and achieving his goals. Yet, the young hero only laughed at those threats, his fighting spirit completely unfazed. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed behind the shocked Guan, revealing that yet another of his allies had just been defeated. The bald fighter instantly went on high alert, freezing in his tracks. Clueless about what was coming next, he barely managed to dodge one of the attacks, but immense fear and mild panic quickly washed over him. Yet, in the next couple of seconds, the big guy had no time to react before one of the lead shells hit him in the head. A similar fate soon awaited the rest of the team, leaving the gang leader completely paralyzed with shock. Livid and extremely tense, Guan turned blue with rage, his eyes locked onto the brazen punk who dared to eliminate his comrades. Earlier, he had told his men that they had to remain elite players so he could always protect them. But the captain also warned them that if they failed, he would immediately stop supporting them. He even threatened that if they lost, Guan would expose their crimes to ensure they were punished. At that moment, the desperate enemy stood before the hero, who pointed a gun at his chest, ready to pull the trigger at any second. The youth coldly announced it was the leader's turn to go to the afterlife. Unexpectedly, the previously confident boss fell to his knees, clearly preparing to beg for his life. With sheer horror in his eyes and a tremor in his voice, he began begging to be spared. Looking like a helpless child, the cold-hearted Liu Yi felt absolutely zero compassion for the enemy who had just tried to murder him. Sobbing, Guan promised that if the fighter spared his life, he would reveal the secrets of the firstborn kingdom. That offer caught the young man's interest. Smiling slightly, the young man gestured for him to start his story. Panic seized the pathetic criminal, who demanded that Liu Yi first promised to spare his life, but his little trick failed instantly, and a loud shot rang out, seriously wounding the boss. The fearless hero had no intention of playing nice, deciding to simply finish him off instead of wasting time. He did not even care about the secret information. The blasted rival flew to the side and crashed hard, though he was lucky enough to survive. In severe pain, Guan struggled to push himself up, but nasty sand filled his lungs. The young hero was quite surprised that his enemy survived such a heavy blow, as that was incredibly rare, but he realized the next wave would start soon, meaning he had to hurry up. Glaring back, the furious boss spat that even if he could not defeat the kid, he would report him to the guild. In his rage, he threatened that the kid would soon end up dead. Claiming the kid would reset to level 1, he swore his run was over. Once the grand changes occurred, any secret the youngster held would become utterly worthless. Meaningless, terrified, Jai Guan desperately begged to team up, arguing that with Liu Yi's strength and his own healing potions, they could actually clear this dungeon together. But the brave young man just smiled, asking what made his opponent think that he could not capture the area alone, which angered his hot-tempered opponent. Yell that he was only rank 28 with beginner gear, reminding him that everything had its limits, but the brave fighter pointed out his gear was equivalent to level 56, completely shutting his enemy up. Then, with a sudden flash, he pulled a glowing blue sphere from his pocket, dropped by his fallen foes. The beautiful orb sparkled brightly in the hands of the incredibly confident young man who knew his own worth. This mysterious item completely shocked Jai Guan, leaving him utterly stunned and speechless at the sight. Without hesitation, the determined fighter chose to open the glowing treasure to extract the powerful gear inside. Within a matter of seconds, our hero was fully suited up in incredibly cool, high-tier armor. He was now wearing a frosty tank top and a purple rank combat suit with high stats. The set was completed by elite combat gloves requiring level 30. Alongside those, he equipped rapid speed boots, crucial for any intense clash. Finally, the ultimate weapon was revealed, a moonlight katana boasting an attack power of 160%. Instantly, his system calculated his combat power, revealing an impressive score of 46 points. Smiling, the bold warrior mocked that he should thank his dead enemies for the free gear. With his stats now more than tripled, it was clear his opponents were nothing but helpless trash. The blunt fighter added that even with the best gear they never stood a chance. Stunned, Jai Guan was breathless, completely unable to process what was unfolding right before him. But his shock quickly twisted into pure rage. This kid simply wouldn't stop. He screamed that even with high stats, there was still absolutely no way he could clear this dungeon alone. Suddenly, a massive explosion erupted nearby, and another deadly wave of spiders came rushing toward the central crystal. Now, the vile monsters were leaping high, with one quickly closing in on its target. But our cold-blooded hero did not lose his cool, instantly striking down the beast before it could even touch him. The calm young man simply smiled, showing off his overwhelming dominance to everyone watching. Meanwhile, a massive horde of vile creatures continued to swarm toward the crystal, desperate to smash it to pieces, but one by one, the spiders were mercilessly shredded as Liu Yi sliced them to ribbons. With his deadly blade, a smug grin never left his face, as he completely lost himself in the thrill of the hunt. With such a broken weapon, he did not even need to think to slice those disgusting bugs apart, which brought him pure joy. He kept tearing through everything in his path, preventing the swarm from getting anywhere near the crystal. From a distance, the tireless player looked completely unstoppable. Victory showing absolutely no signs of exhaustion. Insect carcasses lay scattered all across the blood-soaked ground, but Liu Yi had no intention of stopping. To keep himself safe, he constantly triggered his active regeneration skill. Meanwhile, a stressed-out Jai Guang relied only on his fists to strike back, putting in massive effort but getting terrible results. Panicking, the Mohawk guy yelled at Liu Yi to just dodge and focus on killing, no matter his potion supply, but Jai Guang just sneered, claiming he wanted to watch him die for his arrogance. Our hero ignored the trash talk. Fast and extremely agile, Liu kept crushing those spiders with ruthless combos, even throwing simple knee strikes. Showing absolutely zero fear, the calm and confident swordsman casually told his partner to worry about his own skin. With a lightning-fast swing of his blade, he added that begging won't save him either. This cold response left the Mohawk-wearing guy completely stunned and absolutely furious. With no comeback ready, Jai Guang suddenly realized he had dropped his guard. A creepy horned beetle had already managed to creep up right behind him. Reacting instantly, he balled his fist and punched the monster away, narrowly escaping without taking any damage. Meanwhile, our focused protagonist activated his healing power, yet again instantly topping off his entire health bar. Recharged and ready to go, he prepared to slaughter every single bug left. Before long, a disgusting mountain of dead spiders piled up around them. Watching this, a stunned Jai Guang realized something was completely off. The amount of potions Liu Yi chugged was way past normal player limits. But that distraction cost him. In a split second, he messed up. Unable to dodge a spider bite, he watched his health pool plummet. In a panic, the fighter quickly opened his inventory for a potion, only to find it completely empty. The harsh reality hit him hard. He had run out of resources entirely. Behind him, a massive swarm of hungry beetles crawled closer, ready to feast on his flesh. Trapped on all sides, the helpless Jai Guang started to break down. Desperate, he screamed out that he refused to accept this end. He vowed to drag Liu Yi down with him, cursing his name. But our hero didn't care. He simply kept swinging his sword, cleaving through the horde with a cold smirk on his face. He knew exactly how this battle was going to play out. The Mohawk-wearing traitor was quickly devoured by the bugs, eliminating any threat. A system alert popped up, confirming he was now solo. And with the team down, his final clear rewards would be multiplied tenfold as the sun began to set. The exhausted Liu Yi finally cleared the area and sat down. Sighing in relief, he leaned right back against a massive pile of insect corpses, happy that the nightmare was done. It was lucky these bodies would despawn before the next wave. Otherwise, he wouldn't even know where the crystal was. But then, a random. The golden sphere allows a player to steal 3 items from enemy inventories. Exhausted, he immediately scoops up the precious loot. Close inspection, smirking, Shine mutters that it is about time. The stingy dungeon manager finally did something right, even if it took forever. He grips the golden sphere tightly, feeling its raw power. Warmth hums, his physical strength is completely spent. Surviving the 3rd wave without a boost is impossible. He needs rest. He catches his breath and cracks open the chicken crown ball. Defeating this final onslaught is his only path to survival. Jackpot, he gets the left and right purple rank amber earrings. A flat 10% boost to all of his stats. Next comes a new pistol. Every single attack deals triple damage. Stunned, Lu smiles. Today is his lucky day in this dungeon. He got a gear buff and a weapon upgrade, but wait. This brand new gun has a 60-second cooldown. No big deal. He is ready to test this absolute power as soon as possible. Opening his inventory, he equips everything into special active slots. Instantly, his raw strength surges way past 100%. Other stats explode too. Thrilled, he yells out in pure excitement. For peak stats, his combat power will be completely off the charts. He stops. He actually owes a thank you to his dead enemies. Bowing respectfully, he thanks the Chicken Crown and his fallen foes. They gave him this, but he is still lagging in level. Once he clears this dungeon, he will catch up to everyone. No one will match him. Meanwhile, in the Resurrection Room, Jai Guang of the Mushu City Fighters is briefing his boss. He reports that Yin definitely has a secret to bypass rank stats. Without a doubt, his words carry complete and absolute confidence. Otherwise, a lone weakling could never clear this brutal dungeon alone. The boss orders him to keep leveling and leave Yin to me. He promises to send heavy hitters to eliminate the kid. Bowing, the subordinate promises to do his absolute best. Guan glares upward, wondering how long this arrogant kid can survive. Meanwhile, back in reality, On sits in a quiet cafe. She asks her friend if her family plays that popular game. Her friend eagerly explains that her relatives even donate money. But they constantly force her to power level with them every single day. She hates it, wanting to explore the world her own way. Suddenly, she suggests they start playing together over at her place. It would be so fun, but the sudden offer completely shocks Yun. She loudly objects that she does not even own a capsule. Then a cunning idea strikes. This could set her brother up with Hangya. All she needs is a clever excuse to slip out of the house. They are bound to bond once she slips away. Meanwhile, back in game, the main character continues systematically crushing massive hordes of giant spiders. Honestly, he had never felt such an insane, overwhelming surge of raw power flowing through his veins before. Equipping his new gear made every single fiber of his being buzz. Every cell in his body surged with the system's massive power reinforcement. His heavy sword suddenly felt weightless, and his overall combat instinct sharpened to a whole new level. He was moving like an absolute pro, each step precise and calculated. With his speed doubled, the enemies could barely even touch him anymore. With one powerful leap, he completely soared over the heads of the swarming monsters. This high ground advantage was his perfect chance to strike them down. He swung his blade midair, but a strange sight in the distance caught him off guard. A breathtaking, gorgeous sunset painted the sky as far as the eye could see. Luya smiled as he gazed at the view, his enhanced vision letting him see much further. Slamming back down, he delivered a massive, devastating slash across the battlefield. Dozens of insect monsters fell instantly, but deep down, he knew this still wasn't enough. The threat was far from over, and he had to push even harder. An endless horde of vile, disgusting insect monsters kept marching forward. They were heading straight for the crystal, and he refused to let them destroy it. Determined to stop them, he steeled himself to fight with everything he had. He was ready to tear down mountains, just to reach the legendary zones he'd only dreamed of. Several glowing red eyes suddenly pierced through the heavy, alarming fog. But Luya didn't flinch, and honestly, this boss had no idea who it was dealing with. It was a hideous, level 35 giant spider boss. Luya gripped the hilt of his katana, ready to fight to the absolute end. With blood-pumping focus, he leaped high into the air to deliver the final strike. He brought his sword down hard, aiming straight for the beast's head. Within a few moments, the entire sandy area was completely cleared of monsters. He earned the title of Dungeon Defender, a massive milestone for his level. Suddenly, the system forced him to choose between the path of silence or captivity. Exhausted, he sat on the corpse to plan his next moves. The massive creature's corpse slowly dissolved, rewarding him with a massive mountain of experience. Exhausted but incredibly pleased, Luyi stared up at the sky with a grin. He had finally grown strong enough to turn his absolute dreams into reality. Surely no elite team could possibly reject him now that his stats were this high. With his current goals finally met, he logged out and removed his virtual headset. He stepped outside, staring down at the city lights. The concrete jungle looked incredibly dull compared to the game. But that didn't bother him. He was just proud of his character's insane growth. Still, one major worry lingered in his mind. He desperately needed another neural connection gear so his little sister could also play. It was the only way to keep her safe, and right then, Ah Yun called out. She loudly announced she was finally back from her walk, breaking the silence. Luyi quickly headed to the front door to greet her. She admitted finding a console was nearly impossible, but Hang Nana pulled some serious strings. Thanks to her connections, they managed to secure one, carrying the box into the living room. Unboxing the package together, Luyi stared at the mysterious item in absolute shock. He couldn't believe they had actually scored a legendary Primordial Realm connection device. The excited young man was overjoyed, realizing he could finally help his sister. He could greatly support her. Smiling, Yun announced that they needed to thank her friend, and from that day on, she would live with them. The pink-haired girl waved to him, politely hoping they would get along. The happy brother quickly snatched the box, realizing exactly what was inside. It was the exact device he needed. The excited young man immediately praised the girls, eagerly asking where they had found such a treasure. But his sister was pretty annoyed. He should be paying attention to her friend, not his new gadget. Shy Hyun tried to hide her confusion over why a simple device made him so happy. But wait, what happened a day ago? In an unknown dungeon, a group sat discussing plans for their next cleanup. Everyone was completely staring at the gorgeous Wei from the New Order Guild. Captain Zio Yan suggested she apply to join the main Vanguard unit. After they cleared this area, giving her a much faster path to promotion. Suddenly, the beautiful girl went on high alert, sensing something totally unexpected. But she chose to stay quiet, one of the eager fighters asked the commander how they would ever manage if she really left them. The commander agreed, saying they had invested so much effort in training Wei, and letting her go now when they needed her most was pretty tough. Still, he knew she would not forget them once she rose high. He did not want to hold her back and asked if the charming lady, who was still dead silent, agreed with his words. In response, she just gave a mesmerizing, beautiful smile without uttering a single word, clutching his head. The squad leader decided they could only wish her luck. Another team member just scratched his head, looking pretty thoughtful and sighing deeply, not knowing what to say in a moment like this. Slightly sad, Zio Yan noted they should never hold their friend back. The cheerful crew promised that if she ever faced any tough times, they would always be right there to welcome her back and help. The girls smiled again, thanking them warmly for their incredible kindness. She wanted to ask her teammates for one last favor before leaving. Gently scratching her eyelid, she quietly asked them for a small favor. The puzzled team members lined in closer, listening carefully to her words. But suddenly, everyone on the ground was trapped under a strange blue shield that began draining their life force completely. One of the terrified men stared at the girl, absolutely shocked and furious at her betrayal. She decided to trigger the dungeon reward, knowing it would make her the absolute strongest player in the entire region. The bitter captain screamed, asking if this was how she repaid them for raising her. Smiling coldly, the traitor told him not to be so mad, reminding him that it was just a game and they could easily rebuild. The furious leader leaped up and instantly opened fire, absolutely determined to get revenge for her ultimate betrayal. but Wei only mockingly reminded him that the speed of bullets in this game was highly limited, meaning they could never hit a player with agility over 100. She always preferred cold weapons since their raw power depended entirely on their base stats. Moving like lightning, this ruthless assassin drives her blade straight into her opponent, leaving him absolutely no time to react. Meanwhile, inside a nearby dungeon, a struggling party is desperately trying to survive. Against a massive boss, without a healer, they are pretty much doomed. Even after one brave warrior lands a direct hit inside the monster's jaw, it barely flinches. Some party members mention their serious captain is holding the line. He is totally locked in, proving his worth on the front lines, but there is a catch. His ultimate attack takes way too long to charge. Fortunately, he unleashes enough power to obliterate the giant, sending it crashing down with an earth-shattering boom. Don Sean, the proud squad leader of the New Order Guild, simply dusts off his shoulders and admires his handiwork. One of his teammates asks what is going on, and their calm captain quickly points out that the dungeon is officially cleared. The brave warrior Tenetti warns them that a massive new powerhouse has just surfaced. They need to keep their guard up. A worried teammate asks about this mysterious. Are we looking at a future ally here, or a terrifying new threat? Could they recruit him? The captain replies that this stranger completely obliterated the Mirror Kingdom solo, totally changing everything. Keeping his cool, the blonde captain wonders what exactly she is up to now. Right now, that gorgeous warrior is currently navigating a wild, lawless zone. Deep in the forest, she is completely focused on her system interface when she gets an urgent ping from Raging Burst, ordering her to locate the powerful rookie, Shine. Smirking, the beauty immediately spots a major clue. The boss never specified if she should execute the rookie or bring him in. If she recruits him, she can use his immense power for her own benefit. But if she takes him out, it secures the future of her entire organization. The clever assassin knows that Raging Burst does not care about the boy's fate. As long as the job gets done, either option works perfectly. Clapping her hands, the girl decides it is much safer to eliminate this agile, overpowered newcomer. Meanwhile, Liu Yi is at home, realizing that once the game world takes over, there will be zero chances to level up. He needs to act fast. He recalls that in his past life, the absolute cap was level 60. If he hits that max level before the calamity, he will be virtually unstoppable. With such godly strength, he can easily guarantee his own safety and protect his beloved little sister, which is his one and only goal. Once society collapses, essential resources will dry up incredibly fast. Before the powerful guilds step in to rebuild, food will become the ultimate currency. He decides to rent out the neighboring building to build a heavily fortified base. To prepare, his remaining cash will buy massive stacks of rice and canned food. Survival is his only focus. Right now, Shine is sitting at level 36, leaving him exactly 24 levels away from hitting that sweet maximum cap. His sole focus is power leveling, staying alive inside the game, and hoarding food. Before long, he guides the girls straight to the weapons pavilion, telling them they absolutely must start training hard if they want to survive later. Deeply curious and surprised, Yun, under her nickname, Andromeda, noticed her companion had an impressively high rank and top-tier gear. A high level meant nothing without real skill, so maximum combat training was crucial. They must master every weapon, and the gorgeous girls understood the task. With that, the young mentor stepped out of the room after glancing back. Before leaving, he looked back. Every move Liu Yi made rewrote history. In the original timeline, Huang Nia Chu had never actually lived with them. But thanks to her, he and his sister survived for 3 whole years. Now Liu Yi had to repay his debt. He was ready to push further. It was time to climb to new heights and reach the 60th rank. Half a day later, he emerged from the 35th level dungeon exhausted. The other players knew he could easily clear this massive dungeon alone. Without his incredible power, their run would have been a complete nightmare. While the excited team wanted to keep grinding, Liu Yi stood there, thinking. With a calm smile, the young warrior explained he had other business. The teammates were stunned, declaring they would not go on without him. They simply did not want to fight anymore if he was not leading. They begged him to call them for his next raid, and he agreed. He promised he would. Shortly after, Liu Yi sat down on a bench. He realized that clearing a dungeon took hours, but barely gave any experience. Running this zone only granted half a level for an entire day of work. Sitting in the recruitment hall, he knew this slow pace would never work. At this rate, his goal was a pipe dream, unless he did the unthinkable. An old system alert had stated that losing an ally boosted his stats. His overall power would increase by 10% with every single death. To max his experience, he would have to sacrifice 9 team members. In his past life, players who did this were called absolute monsters. They were treated like street rats. Liu Yi hated the very idea. He did not want to be a villain, but choices were running thin. Suddenly, a new notification flashed on his screen, catching his eye. He opened the private message, wondering who could possibly be reaching out. He was eager to see who sent it and learn their business. It was an unexpected invite from a girl named Wei to team up. She wanted him for a 40th level raid, which truly shocked him. He racked his brain trying to remember where he heard that name. Then the realization hit him, and a wave of pure excitement followed. In his previous life, this very girl had become the absolute strongest. Yet he had no idea why she would suddenly invite him now. Liu Yi hesitated, but he knew this was his best shot at leveling. This dangerous raid would give him the massive boost he desperately needed. Using Wei is a massive gamble, but he's got to play dirty now. She was part of the new order, meaning she definitely had motives. In the past timeline, she was an unstoppable force of nature. He was not entirely sure if he could even handle her yet. But since only high-risk battles would make him grow, he accepted immediately. Now it was time to meet the rest of his new teammates. Scanning the team ranks, he smiles as familiar faces immediately catch his eye. He starts recalling their dark, twisted pasts, beginning with the brutal Kabankik. This warrior won a Desperate Situation award by completing his entire mission. By wiping out all his own allies first, next was. Then there is Pachinushka, the very first to spread vicious slander who, in the end also, turned on her own partner after framing him. The other members had equally twisted histories, meaning this entire dungeon squad had been hand-picked. By Wei herself, the thoughtful Liu Yi tried to figure out how she knew they were such a circus, unaware that she had personally trained them. Taught them those tricks. Just then, Liu Yi joins the team chat where the captain reveals that their goal is the uncontrolled zone. Always cautious, the warrior decides to open his map and study the surrounding terrain in order to plan their route. He spots several completely unoccupied regions around the city of Mushu that are suicide to enter without weapons. The controlled city zones stretch across 5 distinct zones, which Liu Yi knows inside out. All the local dungeons are fully integrated into the town to replenish resources and have long been altered, with 100% of the creatures locked up. Inside Mushu, where Liu Yi once fought Jiquin, but town control over the local dungeons in the uncontrolled zone is dangerously low, so powerful beasts roam. Level 70 monsters stalk uncontrolled areas, eager to kill. Finally, there is the terrifying zone of destruction, where primordial rank beasts lurk, ready to completely pulverize absolutely everything in their path. At that exact moment, the fearless Liu Yi reaches a mysterious, uncharted point in the uncontrolled zone. Suddenly, desperate human screams echo nearby. Impossible to ignore. On high alert, he wonders who is in trouble. He scans the area, spotting bizarre green monsters, glowing red eyes resembling twisted tree roots. Keeping calm, Liu Yi decides to hide. behind a large boulder to analyze the situation, but the beasts are not. Wasting time lunging forward with a horrifying look that freezes their target. They might be weak, but their sheer numbers are overwhelming, and a single squeak is enough to summon every beast in the territory straight here. The warrior doubts that any normal player could survive such an onslaught, guessing the cries came from a reckless adventurer who wandered too far, peeking out. From behind his cover, the observant warrior notices the monsters have dispersed, leaving him wondering if the victim survived. He decides to move forward since staying put is just begging for trouble. Suddenly, a sharp flying projectile, talk about a close call, it nearly ends him. Keeping his cool, he cleanly dodges the lethal attack and remains unharmed, though he still has no clue what is happening, dodging again. He desperately wonders who this aggressive person is, attacking him with a spear in their hands. He forces himself to stay calm to avoid making any critical mistakes and becoming an easy target. With an intense expression, Liu Yi stares directly into the eyes of the enemy, trying to recognize if they have met before. The stranger's eyes glowed a terrifying red, only adding fuel to the fire. Seizing the perfect opening, the young warrior swung his blade with sharp precision, but his opponent quickly raised his weapon in defense. A sly grin spread across the stranger's sharp face, as if he was plotting something devious and chaotic. In the next second, a massive explosion thundered. Blinding light erupted everywhere, sending heavy columns of black smoke into the air. Minutes later, the thick fog began to clear, leaving the two rivals staring each other down, refusing to break their gaze. Grinning wildly, Kabinchik realized this kid possessed real power, and now he understood why the boss selected him. The quiet hero, in turn, glared back with a cold stare as the puzzle in his mind slowly fell into place. The polite warrior remarked that the kid's offensive output was nothing compared to his, but he had still earned his respect. He added that they needed to head toward the meeting point quickly, or roaming beasts would surround them and cause trouble. Eshin said absolutely nothing. He slowly lowered his sword, accepting that the brief hostility between them had passed. Still, the youth silently trailed the man with deep caution. Meanwhile, the veteran warrior recognized this boy's incredible strength and suspected that Wei did as well. Feeling quite satisfied with this outcome, Bourne noted to himself that the overall strength of this team was truly impressive. Yet, the young warrior wondered if anyone would actually survive to claim a reward, given the incredibly high risk of death. Should he proceed, he hesitated. Elsewhere, the rest of the powerful strike force gathered at their designated meeting point inside the lawless zone. Before long, the highly cautious Liu Yi arrived at the scene. Wei, who stood nearby, spotted him instantly, knowing he was the exact person she had been searching for. Leaning back against a rock, the lady smiled sweetly. She examined him closely, from head to toe. Liu Yi silently wondered if this mysterious woman was truly the mastermind behind the invite. Suddenly, the female leader clapped her hands, demanding everyone's absolute attention for a brief strategy session before they entered. The quiet hero decided to analyze his potential new comrades. He wanted to draw his own conclusions. The nearby trio glared back with clear distrust and obvious contempt. Feeling the sudden heavy tension in the air, Kabinchik felt a slight wave of unease wash over him, quietly scratching his neck. Liu Yi, honestly looking at these smug, miserable faces, who could blame him for doubting them? The female leader announced that they would review the rules inside and establish a highly coordinated tactical plan to handle the main raid. The rest of the squad instantly nodded in agreement with her, holding their female commander in incredibly high regard, smiling proudly. The confident lady signaled it was time to move, leading the party forward. Still, Eshin remained silent, deeply aware that survival was never guaranteed, and that the sheer risk of a gruesome death loomed incredibly large over them. Was this mission worth the deadly risk? He had no choice but to go. Stealing his resolve, the young warrior smiled, asking himself if he was truly afraid of repeating the horrors of his past life. Wei was known as the deadliest fighter around, meaning Liu Yi was now officially partnered with an absolute beast. He realized he was absolutely terrified of dying, knowing he could never match his elite teammates. All his hard work would be utterly useless. Still, he pressed on. He forced a fake confidence. He had to prove his worth to everyone. He resolved to show this deadly dungeon that he belonged here. Suddenly, a chilling child's voice echoed through the dark, twisted ruins. The voice whispered that he would find his own toy if nobody wanted to play. Corpse after corpse littered the ground, making the lonely boy want to head home. He was just too bored to stay, but leaving this place was already impossible. That realization filled him with a deep, creeping sense of dread. High above on a looming tower, a dark silhouette stood beneath a glowing sphere. The strange, glowing energy instantly made the uneasy players freeze. Many assumed they were just watching a scripted cutscene unfold before them. But the Firstborn Kingdom's randomized dungeon settings were genuinely terrifying. What truly rattled the group, though, was a far grimmer reality. Surviving this brutal trial without anyone dying seemed entirely impossible. Their only clue in this desolate zone was a creepy, blood-stained puppet. Suspicion grew as strange, unnatural events began happening around them. A sudden system alert popped up. Eshin had to find a key item. He had to steal it from an ally's pack and destroy it to win. Reading those words on his screen left the young warrior completely frozen. This sick game was designed to reward those who survived absolute despair. A high-risk gamble where a massive prize waited at the very end. Then a bright system alert flashed. A countdown had begun. They had exactly 6 hours. Feeling the immense pressure, Eshin hesitated. He needed to quietly check his own inventory before anyone noticed. He waited for the group to calm down slightly to make his move. If the cursed doll was in his bag, a single flinch would expose him. Eshin knew exactly what would happen next. He would have to fight 2 incredibly powerful players all on his own. Nearby, one ally cast a deeply suspicious glare at the rest of them. Betrayal was in the air. Kabankik, however, remained dead silent. His stern face made it look like he already knew who had the doll. Players stared daggers at each other, waiting for a knife in the back. The sharp-eyed Lu realized everyone here was hiding a dark secret. They were all trapped in the same desperate situation. Talk about ultimate trust issues. Suddenly, Wei clapped her hands sharply, drawing everyone's eyes to her. Eshin watched her closely, preparing himself for the worst possible news. She coldly demanded that whoever held the puppet step forward immediately. In exchange, she offered to split their rewards if the thief was executed. The entire squad agreed instantly, sending a cold shiver down Eshin's spine. He kept his poker face tight while his mind raced for a way out. Using the sudden distraction, he quickly accessed his inventory system. But as the digital screen materialized, his stomach dropped completely. The reality staring back at him was worse than his darkest fears. Resting right there in his first inventory slot was the bloodstained puppet. This puppet was the mission's symbol. He simply could not believe he had just joined this new team only for them to hand him a gift that could kill him. Tense, Ein started planning his next move. Giving up was definitely not an option here. His target now was to eliminate one of his allies, passing the deadly puppet over to another party member. It was the only way to escape this immediate threat, but the young fighter knew that even if he succeeded, surviving against 2 powerhouses would be incredibly tough. Their dark magic was far from friendly, wearing a sweet smile. The commander asked if anyone wanted to confess and get this over with quickly. Ein kept his serious expression, staring intently at the floor to avoid showing any signs of guilt. Suddenly, the female commander stepped right up to him, demanding he admit to everyone that the cursed puppet was currently in his inventory. This unexpected accusation hit Ein like a truck, sending a wave of panic through him. The gorgeous commander then realized they had not even been introduced yet. She introduces herself with a flourish, proudly declaring how much she loves to steal the spotlight. Ein just stares back with deep suspicion, staying completely silent. He shifts his gaze over to the other team members, right at that moment. His supposed allies are looking back with mock smirks, making the air feel incredibly hostile. The cunning Boorman makes it obvious they have zero good intentions for the newcomer. Ein realizes they are not simply studying each other's reactions, they are actively verifying if he holds the item. Oh, talk about a brutal setup. He finally realizes they are all in cahoots, leaving him in an incredibly tight spot. Taking a slow breath, the brave guy starts putting the puzzle pieces together, though one thing still puzzles him. Why is this sneaky girl working so hard to ruin him? He silently reasons that by inviting him to clear this dungeon, they have practically signed their own death warrants. After all, he is destined to claim the ultimate reward. Ein locks eyes with his ruthless opponent, who merely returns a mocking smile. The smug woman sneers that he is completely outmatched in terms of raw power. So she decides to stop wasting time and kick off the mission right away. The reckless Boorman suggests giving the kid a fair chance to defend himself first, just so they can crush his hopes into absolute dust later. The fake leader sighs, acting as if that is far too cruel for her gentle heart. Wearing a sly grin, she asks them not to force the poor kid, though her eyes show she has a much darker plan in mind. Suddenly, without warning, Ein activates his special claw and pendulum gear, a totally unexpected move. A moment later, the calm and collected young man aims his firearm straight at the enemy, ready to pull the trigger. The commander simply scoffs, claiming he does not appreciate kindness and refuses to cooperate, leaning in closer. She presses her forehead against his, quietly chanting some bizarre incantation under her breath like a creepy witch. Behind her, the rest of the squad bursts out, laughing at the idiot who brought a gun to a supernatural magic fight, mocking his useless weapon. Meanwhile, the Boorman cabin smugly points out that his heavy artillery shells will easily trap this fool in a deadly cage of fire. The rest of the squad continues to roar with laughter, joking that their target has a great sense of humor since victory is impossible. She giggled, clutching her stomach as she called them hilarious and admitted she loved it. A faint smirk crossed the face of the quiet Ye Shine as he stood there. Without warning, he unleashed a capture technique, making the alert woman gasp. Her expression twisted instantly as she realized the situation had spun out of control. Her ally opened fire with his pistol, but the agile woman leaped away completely unharmed. She escaped completely unscathed, leaving her opponent stunned by her agile reflexes. Landing nearby, she stared closely at the boy, muttering under her breath. She admitted he had startled her, but she refused to panic. Wei Yi ordered Cabinchik to stop playing around and attack immediately. They needed to finish off this insolent kid, but Liu Yi just kept smiling. He stood ready to fight them to the bitter end. The nervous deputy commander suddenly cried out that his body was completely frozen. He struggled to control his wild emotions, and his allies desperately wanted to help. They tried to break him free from his invisible shackles, but shock froze them too. Sai got a system alert about the enemy's level 30 enslavement ability. The ruthless warrior immediately summoned a powerful purple-ranked pendulum weapon. He then activated a triple damage boost, sacrificing 100 knowledge points. This massive buff would make his next strike deal 5,000 damage. A massive golden storm erupted with a roar, surging directly toward the helpless Cabinchik. The impact was devastating, sending a wave of absolute agony through his stomach. His body literally began to shatter into tiny pieces right before their eyes. The defeated ally collapsed onto the cold floor, drawing horrified gasps from everyone. The system then notified our hero that Cabinchik was officially dead. Talk about a massive plot twist, the puppet transferred to another player. The team leader and the rest of the group stood absolutely paralyzed by this. They stood paralyzed in shock for minutes, while our hero remained highly cautious. He worried the leader and deputy might join forces to launch a combined assault. Plus, there was still a mysterious fourth powerhouse hiding within their ranks. Making a reckless move now could be fatal, so he needed a plan. According to Wei Yi, only she and her top assistant possessed real strength. They had completely underestimated Liu Yi's true capabilities from the start. That fatal mistake was exactly how he managed to take down Cabin Chick. Eliminating that power pair made his trial much easier, but he wasn't done. Now he just needed to clean up the rest of the group. He warned them that the puppet had passed to one of their allies. To secure his reward, Liu Yi had to play his next cards carefully. He decided to keep the player carrying the critical item alive until last. Hearing this, the furious Wei Yi froze in shock as realization hit her. She instantly ordered everyone to freeze, her face completely pale with fear. She shrieked that the enemy was trying to flush out whoever held the puppet. Panic washed over the group as they realized they had no idea what to do. One terrified girl took a slow step back while the others stood frozen. Flashing a cold, cunning grin, the highly perceptive Liu Yi spoke in a low voice. He whispered that he had already spotted his primary target among them. Looking at the trembling girl, he smiled, knowing she was trapped by her own team. With her back against the wall, the system flashed, boosting his stats across the board. Each stat jumped by 200 points, costing him 400 knowledge points. Charging forward like lightning, he gripped the hilt of his katana. He knew exactly how to play this out as he made his move. In mere seconds, every single enemy was sent flying, crying out in pain. They crashed hard. Our hero felt pretty certain these normal players were zero threat. In his eyes, they were just easy prey. Then, the kill feed started popping up. System alerts confirmed he had wiped out Gennedy's refrigerator, Lask, and Kashenko. Along with Mashini and the rest, Wei was absolutely furious at this humiliation. She charged straight at him, but our clever fighter was already prepared. He raised his sword right in time, blocking her heavy strike. While they clashed, Pachinushka dropped to the cold floor in sheer shock. She watched the duel unfold as the angry woman kept fighting. Wei realized this guy was aiming for the big underground bounty. She had to admit he was brave, but he just smiled. Since she was the last one standing, he was ready to go all out. She activated a secret high leap, warning him that he picked the wrong target. Then in a flash, she completely vanished into thin air. Talk about a stealth play, how is he going to react to this? He stayed calm, carefully scanning the area to make sure he was ready. Suddenly, she materialized right behind him and lunged forward. She aimed for a backstab, but he whipped around instantly. He swung his katana, barely escaping the strike, heart pounding. She lunged again, successfully driving her dagger right into his back. His health bar dropped fast, but the tough Yeshind stayed standing. He was still a massive threat, making him incredibly hard to bring down. Suddenly, he triggered his health recovery and went on the offensive. Wei was caught off guard, realizing this guy was seriously tough. She had landed a full combo, yet he was still standing strong. She mocked him, saying he would eventually run out of healing potions. Once his elixirs ran out, the victory would easily be hers. But he just grinned, refusing to waste time chatting with her. He activated his Steel Breaker's gear for a devastating counter. It dealt nearly 10,000 damage, but he healed up instantly. She was stunned, unable to figure out how he pulled that off. After all, players could only bring 10 elixirs into this dungeon. Striking at the perfect moment, he swung his blade to break her stance. With a calm smile, Liu Yi apologized, stating he was the sole winner. But even after that strike, the girl managed to stay on her feet. She showed absolutely no signs of damage and still held her twin daggers tightly. Still, she knew the battle had completely turned against her. There was no escape, and he had absolutely no intention of showing mercy. Our hero swung his sword once more, hoping to end it right here. But suddenly his expression tightened as things took a very strange turn. Moving like lightning, his opponent made one last desperate, lightning-fast move. He flips backward, landing right beside Pashanushka, who stands completely frozen. Seeing his massive pool of health, she gets visibly anxious. Though she assumes he is just a support, he analyzes her build. She dumped all her points into agility, boosting her speed. Her physical stats are absurdly high. Silence fills the room. The commander stands there, quietly weighing her options right now. Suddenly, she flashes a sweet smile, showing he got it completely right. He read her perfectly. Tucking her hair back, she remains calm. She casually admits her energy is running dry, so she is yielding. She even offers to take out her own ally to end the raid. Liu Yi knows exactly what she is doing. If she cannot win, she ends it. She plans to force a mission failure by executing Pashanushka. But since she hasn't struck yet, he cannot let his guard down. She sighs, claiming it is incredibly tough to make a choice. After all, Liu Yi was her main target inside this dungeon. Suddenly her restriction lifts, catching him off guard. The sudden shift leaves him completely frozen. He tries to move. He frantically tries to trigger his skill, but nothing happens. A blue barrier materializes, blocking him from reaching them. The commander grins at her ally, her scheme coming together. In the private chat, she orders her ally to kill her, then commit suicide. She promises that doing so will net them double the rewards. Liu Yi stands there in absolute disbelief at what is unfolding. He is completely paralyzed, unable to stop what comes next. Before fading away, she taunts him, calling him a total loser. Her mocking laughter echoes as she celebrates her cheap victory. She got exactly what she wanted. In a flash, she is gone. The commander dissolves into light, leaving Liu Yi in total silence. He stumbles back as the harsh reality finally sinks in. He drops his weapon and collapses onto the cold floor. Staring blankly, Liu Yi wonders how things went so wrong. Beside him, his summoned puppet deactivates, returning to his inventory. It is sick how far they went just to deny him a win. There is no triumph here. Clutching his head, despair sets in. What should he do? All that is left is waiting for his inevitable death. He wonders if his chance to change everything is really gone. Did it just slip away, leaving him with absolutely nothing left to do? For a while, he just lies on the floor, breathing heavily. His face remains deadly serious as a new thought comes to mind. He needs to get up and take action right now. Pushing himself up, Liu Yi realizes there must be another way to win. Even if his allies are gone, the system rules remain. There must be an alternative path to complete this dungeon. He has no idea what it is, but he is determined. A few minutes later, he steps deeper into the unknown. He reached out, his hand pressing against a completely invisible wall. Clearly, the boundaries of this secret kingdom were far smaller than expected. It was exactly the size of the nearby platform. Quietly, Eshin approached. A massive iron shell, wondering how to make the best use of it. The uncontrolled zone was limited to this puppet-filled cylindrical tower. Without hesitating, the brave warrior unleashed his power, soaring upward to land right on top. Landing. He looked around and spotted a massive sign warning that hope and despair exist side by side. He noticed some tiny writing but couldn't read it. Leaning in closer, he realized someone had desperately scratched a message onto the surface, warning that they were completely unable to open the door. Eshin pressed his palm flat against the barrier, triggering a heavy, echoing click. The system immediately notified Liu that he needed 1,000 knowledge points to open the membrane, but that was an incredibly steep price. He simply couldn't afford to blow his entire stash here, yet he had a clever workaround. Upgrading his base abilities would grant him the necessary points automatically. He had to do this to enter the uncharted zone fully prepared for battle. Without hesitation, the fearless fighter confirmed the system prompt to authorize the transaction. Immediately, the massive membrane door slowly began to grind open. Then, a blinding white light burst forward, so intense it would terrify any ordinary person. I mean, what else could he do except stand frozen and let it happen? He had no other choice. Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice frantically yelled for a man named Dean to boot up the system computing power immediately. Soon. Lu rubbed his eyes, trying to clear his head, but the strange scientist was already barking orders at him. The anxious blonde man demanded that he choose between displaying the data feed or dissolving and mapping everyone nearby. Our hero was completely baffled by all this talk about computing power and complex setups, having never even met this erratic scientist before in his life. The stressed researcher kept screaming at him to make up his mind quickly. He needed to think fast. Keeping his cool, Eshen realized this must be a pre-programmed scenario. There was undoubtedly a hidden trial sequence playing out. Right here, serving as the gateway test to cross through the membrane. Although he didn't grasp the technical options, he knew a choice was mandatory. If he wanted to progress, weighing his options, the young warrior hesitated. Let's be honest, one wrong move here, and it's game over. The script of this simulation dictated that a massive catastrophe was looming. Survival hung entirely on decoding the scientist's frantic clues about raw processing power. He wondered what would happen once that power was fully unleashed. Perhaps it was simply a ticket to live, a primal right to stay alive. Or maybe it was a tool meant to rescue humanity from doom. In his previous life, the hero never progressed past the very first level, missing out on these incredibly complex trials of the origin world. If survival was his only goal, he would choose to display and protect his followers. But as a true savior, his approach had to be entirely different. Lu made sure those 3 neglected souls had access to flawless system processing, knowing only a select few could ever survive beyond the edge of imagination. Once, long ago, if a fighter did not come from the first world, their level would never increase. Still, Luya was not doing too bad, realizing he just needed to make a hard choice. He reached out to touch the screen inscribed with the option to dissolve and apply everything to the map. Right then, a spectacular process began, and the young man prayed everything would work out perfectly for him. But a few seconds later, a surprised and then extremely serious Luya focused entirely on his own body. He was alarmed by the unsettling realization that absolutely nothing had changed. He began to suspect that he had simply made the wrong choice. But then, the warrior quickly realized that the correct answer was to focus on revealing the one who was stalking him, because the puppet had settled inside him. His physical body was locked in a constant state of combat. Consequently, the rate of his physical recovery was extremely slow. Even so, the brave warrior managed to pass the trial twice. He concentrated on gathering the necessary energy. After just an hour and a half, he had already accumulated 700 knowledge points, which was a great result. He received a system notification stating that 1,000 points were required to finally shatter the membrane. Soon enough, Luya faced another critical choice between 2 different paths, but this time he knew the correct path. For the first few moments, the focused fighter silently analyzed the runes written on the screen, weighing all his choices. He could not help but wonder if this was too simple, whether the penetration test was a trick, and why the gate was so vital. He recalled the creepy words of the dead puppet, who was so bored and wanted nothing more than to go home, yet could never return. The door refused to let the puppet pass into the research institute, and yet the warrior still could not understand why. Soon, though, the highly perceptive fighter realized it was her flawed nature that blocked her from entering. The young man understood that this test was not about picking a correct answer, But adopting the right mindset, honestly, how was he supposed to figure that out? Since Luya had no clue, he simply pointed his index finger at the digital monitor, deciding to put his absolute faith in his own instinct, confident. In his choice, he prepared to lock in that second option once more, namely dissolution, putting everything on the line. Over the next brief moments, our hero stood entirely still, watching the screen closely with a dead serious expression. Plastered on his face, he was stunned when absolutely nothing changed a second time. This was a highly alarming sign. He only had one last attempt remaining and had to wait, yet the determined warrior refused to lose faith. Sitting calmly in a meditative posture with his hands folded over his chest, the focused fighter devoted himself entirely to gathering the vast power of knowledge. After another hour and a half, the quest was complete and the 30-minute countdown for the secret strategy began. Honestly, talk about intense pressure. Said that 1,000 points were required to open the membrane. He activated it. Immediately, his face remained dead serious as the world began shifting around him, but he stayed perfectly calm, without a single doubt. Luyi declared he would choose dissolution again, fully convinced it was the only correct answer. Suddenly, our hero felt a massive vibration shake beneath. Yashing leaped back in shock, freezing on the spot as he watched the chaos unfolding ahead, desperately hoping things would actually work this time. Moments later, Liu Yi let out a thrilled shout. His wild plan actually worked. The massive cylindrical platform began to descend, signaling that the most critical phase of the test was finally over. He stood firm, absolute in his logic. After all, this mysterious door would only budge with absolute, unwavering consistency. The door would only open if they gave the same exact response 3 times. Solving this cryptic riddle together was their only shot at the secret level. Seconds later, a pristine staircase materialized. Strangely, it didn't even look gloomy. For the first time ever, someone cleared this solo, all by choosing the same option 3 straight times. This meant maxing out his wisdom stats and triggering a desperate, last-ditch counterattack. Pure desperation. Honestly, who else besides Liu Yi could actually unlock this secret trial? He had to be incredibly cautious when dealing with Wei, but raw survival instinct was what saved him from disaster. If he had known how completely unhinged she was, he wouldn't have run those last calculations that cost so many lives. For now, the focused warrior advanced through the endless blue corridor, searching for any clues. Then he suddenly stumbled upon the cold corpse of a woman, her pristine white robes ruined by crimson bloodstains. Yet this gruesome sight didn't shake Liu Yi at all. He remained entirely calm. Suddenly, a strange white orb with red braiding glowed in the center of his chest. A totally bizarre phenomenon. The alert young warrior immediately focused his gaze on it, keeping a perfectly cool head. But what happened next was even wilder. Within seconds, a strange fusion process began between him and the corpse. The system quickly congratulated him on executing a master strategy that successfully purified the puppet. It also announced that reaching a deadlock had unlocked special social rewards. But suddenly, the precious weapon in Liu Yi's hands began dissolving. Shocking him deeply, he tried to stay calm, but the young warrior's legs began shaking violently. A sudden spasm took over his body, which was a truly terrifying sign. When it came down to it, Liu Yi was absolutely terrified of dying in this primordial realm. He knew it. And he realized it all too quickly, clutching his head with a desperate smile. He silently mocked his own cowardice. At last, the setup completed, rewarding the fighter with a massive chunk of experience. Leaping 4 full levels, he was once again presented with 2 paths, one that blocked the victim's physical form and another that let him place critical markers. Tightening his fist, the young warrior could barely believe his luck. He thought defeating Wei was just a fantasy. He let out a joyous shout, knowing he had actually succeeded. Instantly, the teleportation sequence began as The thrilled young cultivator laughed with pure relief. Meanwhile, the two gorgeous martial artists, Huang Naya and Ayan, remained in the weapons pavilion. Completely focused on their brutal training, the two stunning women looked at each other and smiled, knowing they were making incredible, rapid progress. Meanwhile, Wei was stuck at the player resurrection point, having spent 6 whole hours waiting around with absolutely nothing to do. She stood there with crossed arms, hoping for some excitement. But nothing happened, and she soon realized she was lost. Still, she refused to panic, only looking incredibly annoyed. She immediately sent a direct message, begging the guild president to find a mirror space for her, so she could recover her lost levels after that brutal challenge. Rumor had it that Eshin was the exact player their leader wanted, the legendary support. Right then, the guild leader was locked in a private meeting room with a man who offered to help secure control outside the safe zone, Deadwater, relying on his bare fists, smiled and promised him that everything would go smoothly. Of course, he wanted something in return, a standard condition for any deal. The wealthy young gentleman flat out demanded a massive favor from him. He wanted 100,000 raiders from the secret kingdom, and he agreed. Deadwater claimed it would be easy. Soon, the red-haired fighter stepped outside into the open air, leaving the New Order Guild headquarters. His loyal partner was already waiting outside, anxious to hear how it went. He desperately hoped the deal was finally done. The nervous young man had heard that people were searching everywhere for that elite support player. They wanted that legendary cleansing support. Deadwater snapped, his anger exploding. He kicked a thick metal pole, bending it completely. Watch this crazy strength. His ally froze on the spot, barely daring to take a breath. Deadwater spat that everything was ruined because the guild demanded 100,000 raiders, but his partner quickly pointed out that this was always part of their plan, so why was he so furious? He growled back. He hated not being an elite player with unique energy. Those top guilds only want rare talents. His ally began to panic, wondering how they could ever climb the ranks and rule this new order. Meanwhile, Liu Yi was sitting at home, deeply lost in thought. He kept staring at the prompt about absolute destruction through raw power. He wondered what would happen once his system computing power reached 100%. There had to be a link between his situation and the digital strength shown in the trials. Endless questions filled his mind. Clearing his head, the young man realized he had to trust his senses. His entire future rested on this. First things first, time to wash up. He headed straight for the bathroom to relax, but someone was already inside. It was the lovely Huang Nayana, busy drying off after her shower. The blue-eyed sister looked up and saw him enter. A bit flustered, she gave a small wave and quietly offered a greeting. She kept towel-drying her soft pink hair. Liu Yi just smiled back warmly. He stood completely frozen in place. Talk about an incredibly awkward moment. Then he quickly turned around and headed out, his rubber slippers squeaking softly. She finished her routine and followed him out, leaving the room behind. The bathroom stood totally empty, but the observant Liu Yi noticed something interesting. Whenever Huang Nayana was around, a wonderful, sweet scent filled the air. A sweet aroma filled the air, making a pretty deep impression on him. His cheeks flushed slightly red as he gave his face a firm pat. No time to lose, the young man needed to hurry and log back in. Setting his next goals, he prepared to step into the firstborn kingdom. He realized that reaching level 60 was going to require immense dedication. This meant over 30 runs in the secret kingdom, with only 22 days left. Very soon, this game would merge with reality. It would consume everything. Time was running short. His gear was still a massive issue. Finding new equipment was tied directly to the spirits of the kingdom. He could also use those precious spirits to upgrade his low-level items. Having only 11,000 points saved, Yi Xing felt a slight sting of regret. Most of those points were his rewards from 3 perilous journeys. He salvaged the rest. Dismantling unused gear did the trick. Still, he completely lacked a proper headdress, a necklace, and an emblem. Fusing those items together would cost him 5,000 spirit points. He would have to complete 40 more challenges than his previous run. The determined Yi Xing knew that reaching his goal meant taking massive risks. To secure some extra rewards, the young warrior definitely needed a solid plan. But who should he target? Not a single idea came to him. Deep in thought, a sudden message flashed on his screen. An unknown sender. The wary fighter braced for the worst. This dangerous situation immediately narrowed down his circle of potential suspects. Surprisingly, the president of the New Order 10 had contacted him directly. The leader suggested a private meeting if the young man was free. This unexpected offer caused instant distrust and tension for our brave fighter. In the past, that arrogant man had treated him like a piece of garbage. Grabbing the helpless Yi Xing by his collar, he had tossed him aside like a toy. The poor boy lay helpless on the floor, praying to survive the encounter. A guild member had sneered that trash like him had no place there. Get lost, they threw him out of the room before the president arrived. Back in his past life, that faction completely dominated the Firstborn Kingdom. They conquered southern China and quickly became the strongest force in existence. Weaker players were treated like total nobodies, only elite power mattered. So it was completely impossible for Yi Xing not to hate them deeply. Now the leader wrote that he suddenly wanted to form a specialized team. But Yi Xing knew they only needed him as cheap muscle to bolster their power. Surprisingly, the other team members also possessed incredibly unique, game-breaking abilities. So perhaps this cooperative venture was not completely hopeless after all. The president added that they would be heading straight into the Chaos Zone. Yi Xing coldly replied that he would consider the offer and write back later. His solo speed for gaining experience and spirit was already far superior. It made absolutely no sense to appear outside their safe control territory. A nearby port was swarming with high-level monsters well over level 70. But fear was never an option. He completely ignored all the danger warnings. Crafting 40 pieces of high-tier gear would require 650 spirit points. He got ready in an instant, fully equipped from head to toe. The main character had nothing to fear. He did not fear the upcoming challenges. His gear started with the legendary headgear. Of the Awakened, the Guardian's Necklace, the Uniform of Wisdom, and pants with 30% protection. Then came some solid boots, orange gloves, and a pair of earrings that gave a great boost to the player's mind and perception. Finally, the collection was complete with a fiery emblem, a frost weapon with massive damage, and a pistol with an attack power of 300 points. The system notified him that his detected combat power was over 100. So the brave young man was promoted to a higher-level fighter. Surprised, Liu noticed that. After his stats crossed 100, his powers skyrocketed. Significantly, he truly wondered if he could raise all his skills if. He kept growing stronger. For several minutes he stood completely still with a serious expression, deeply lost in thought about his options. Then he remembered the power system could be activated as long as he had the energy, but if he possessed these abilities, other probably did too. The team was basically 10 clones of the young man who had decided to fight outside their comfort zone. Sending them there was not that impossible. The president promised the fighter 100,000 secret kingdoms, which shocked him since it was unclear why he would offer that. The kid did not mind because he would have money for food, and the cunning young man was already smiling slightly while reading his messages. In the chat, Deadwater greeted his new colleague as an energetic player and said they needed to work together to help the group. The president noted they would meet near the north gate, so Eshan decided to disable his headgear first. The perceptive young man knew he needed to carry a regular gun with him and hide his knife to stay safe in any situation. Very soon, the team of 10 people arrived at the designated meeting spot. To begin their mission, Liu reached the meeting point, remaining completely calm and showing that he feared absolutely no one. The stern Captain Tan watched him closely and quietly formed his own conclusions. A nearby trio of allies also began examining the young man since they had never met him. Before, several other guys watched the kid suspiciously, wondering if they could trust him, but get this, Deadwater was completely taken by surprise when he looked closer and realized this was no ordinary traveler. The excited player shouted that it was Eshin, the one they had been waiting for and wanted to meet so badly. The polite fighter was the first to introduce himself to our protagonist, who felt a bit overwhelmed by the warm welcome. Smiling in response, the friendly young man greeted his new allies to make a good first impression. Commander admitted he had never seen anyone with support powers before, and now one stood right in front of him. Before heading into the danger zone, he decided to show them 2 secret kingdoms, promising that they would prove useful later. The brave youth was not surprised that one of the strongest figures in the Primordial Kingdom now ruled the new order. To start, the calm leader asked the young men to show him what they were truly capable of. At that moment, the boys exchanged a confused glance. They felt lost for a second, but quickly gathered their focus. Deadwater confidently stepped up first, while a puzzled Liu wondered about the president. Did the leader know their exact abilities? The red-haired fighter smiled warmly. He encouraged his comrade, saying this would help the team trust them much more. The reluctant warrior realized there was no escape from this, leaving him no other option. He simply had to accept it. From prior training with strong allies, Deadwater learned something. He learned that skill range is directly tied to the reach of your weapon. His weapon was a custom glove with an attack range of roughly 1.5 meters. He had to close that distance to land a hit. Now everything started making sense. The guild manager finally understood the deep connection between equipment and player skills. Eshin was shocked, silently noting that his ally was wielding a unique boxing glove. It was still completely unclear how far a weapon like that could reach. The fighter had never actually questioned this. His skills had always just worked automatically, but now he suddenly felt incredibly nervous. His breathing grew heavy, and cold sweat began to pour down his face. Then his colleague showed off his first ability, a recovery spell. He demonstrated the healing directly on the president before moving to his mantra ability. This debuff would weaken age and slow down the boss to ensure they hit their target. His third skill was a silence ability, capable of shutting down even the toughest enemies. Deadwater decided to hold back his fourth skill for the right moment. He hoped the guild leader would understand why he was keeping a secret. The blonde leader smiled faintly. He had no complaints since he had already seen more than enough. Next up was Liu Yi. He also showed his first 3 team-oriented skills, keeping his ultimate hidden. He decided to keep his fourth skill as his ultimate ace. He announced his 3-meter blade. It came with sharpening and blessing skills, without wasting a single second. He demonstrated his power by unexpectedly binding his own ally with heavy chains. This crowd control skill could freeze a target completely for 10 seconds. It was still highly uncertain if this trick would work against the raid boss. Luckily, his second skill could instantly cleanse any negative status effect on him. Just like his buddy, the young warrior kept his ultimate card hidden. Ending his explanation, Liu looked over at his partner with a smug grin. Deadwater felt a wave of pride seeing his companion perform so brilliantly. The blonde guild leader pondered for a moment before reaching a decision. With these 2 on board, they finally stood a real chance at success. He announced that they previously failed due to a lack of utility support. They had been forced to retreat, but now they had 2 powerhouse supports. The president raised his fist, urging everyone to push deep into the uncharted zone. They had to uncover the secrets beyond the safe borders. Are you ready for this? Their fighting spirit ignited, and the entire team eagerly prepared to set off. With that, the group marched forward, each member lost in deep thought. Eshin paused in his tracks for a brief second, feeling slightly hesitant. Raiding outside the control zone offered massive rewards, but the danger was legendary. Yanku wondered why the leader of the new order was acting so confident. He was eager to attack and uncover his secrets, while Dead Water noticed the kid was not moving, so the ally raised his hand and told the young man not to fall. Behind, right at that moment, he was shaken out of his deep thoughts, smiling calmly at his new partner. Luya said he was coming, though his mind remained troubled. His nagging doubts simply would not leave him alone. The redhead also smiled, but his inner voice warned that there was only room for one of them. The cunning fighter promised himself to get rid of Shayna, ensuring he would be the undisputed powerhouse in this team. After a while, the leader explained that dangerous zones and chaotic lands were completely chaos zones and dangerous lands were completely different. He added that the difficulty of these zones scaled directly with the total number of players in the team, which is why he gathered a group of exactly 10 players. He warned that nothing would drop from the monsters, warning they might have to sacrifice some of their allies. During difficult battles, the party listened attentively to their commander, absorbing his warnings, even though they were pretty terrified inside. Soon the fearless leader, 10, leaped forward to build up immense speed. The others quickly followed, but the analytical Lu Yi was in no hurry to run with them. To run with the herd, still, the brave warrior calmly let himself fall down, calmly preparing to execute the same sequence of actions since there was no other choice. Couple of seconds later, he was falling rapidly toward where his new allies were already waiting. Throughout the entire drop, he remained completely calm, which gave him a massive and incredibly useful advantage in completing this trial. Right before landing, the warrior carefully calculated his moves to avoid making any mistakes. Make a mistake, bending his knees, he stood firmly on his feet, cracking the hard stone while remaining completely unharmed. He quickly stood tall and surveyed his surroundings as thunder began to crash nearby. Sudden flashes of lightning illuminated the sky, impossible to ignore. Keeping a cool head, Luya scanned the rocky wasteland in search of clues to understand what threats lay ahead. Right then, a massive spiky beast was lurking nearby, stalking the team. Hiding behind the ruins a few dozen meters away, the hungry creature began to growl incredibly loudly, risking attracting a lot of unwanted attention, but it did not care. Alerted by the strange noises, Shayna turned his gaze right toward it. Sensing the danger, their cold leader 10 ordered the newcomer to flee. But the young man just stood completely frozen, not understanding their urgent command at first. 10 yelled that they had to reach a safe zone before any of them got seriously injured. Suddenly, the vicious beast launched an aggressive attack, realizing that those pathetic little humans had already compromised its hiding spot. But then a colossal giant dwarfing the tiny beast suddenly appeared, grabbed the creature tightly, and completely crushed it to pieces in his hand. The massive giant moved with incredible speed, crashing down with every single leap. This furious giant beast wanted nothing more than to slaughter these players who dared trespass on its territory. Meanwhile, the terrified players fled, simply not daring to stop for even a single second. The calm leader 10 glanced back, commanding their vanguard to distract the monster so they could escape. The frontline fighter heard the urgent command loud and clear, completely ready to risk his life. Right at that exact moment, he activated a powerful debuff skill, hoping to slow down their pursuer. The beast was struck, slowing down from the impact. Suddenly, the spiky monster stopped and spun around, struggling to understand what was happening to it. It struggled immensely to take even a single step forward, yet it would not halt its efforts. Meanwhile, the rest of the team safely held their ground. But Dead Water kept glancing back, lost in his own silent thoughts. If this beast was truly as powerful as rumored, he had to take action. The scheming player locked his eyes on Lu Yi, who was running far ahead. He wanted this dangerous rival out of the picture as quickly as possible. So the traitor reached out to summon a tracker mark, signaling nearby predators. The beacon would lure every beast within a kilometer for 10 long minutes. Almost instantly, spotted wild predators nearby caught the scent of human flesh. They sniffed the air aggressively, trying to pinpoint exactly where it came from. Now alerted, the bloodthirsty pack began creeping forward, ready for a feast. They moved slowly, eager to satisfy their hunger. Meanwhile, their massive leader suddenly froze, leaving Captain 10 confused as to why it stood still. Meanwhile, a highly focused Lu Yi sprinted ahead with absolute urgency. Without warning, a massive spiky beast leaped directly at the young warrior. He reacted instantly despite the intense pressure, bracing for the hard impact. But the overwhelming brute force slammed him hard against a stone wall. Suddenly, the panicked allies noticed a massive wave of monsters closing in. They were gaining ground fast, leaving the group completely baffled and terrified. No one knew why the beasts targeted Lu Yi, and Dead Water kept quiet. But the sharp Captain 10 immediately shifted his suspicious glare toward him. He knew the devious support player was behind this sudden chaotic turn. Sure enough, the traitor smiled, pleased that his malicious trap worked perfectly. The captain ordered his squad to retreat to the nearest safe zone. He intended to head back alone to rescue Lu Yi from danger. The loyal guild members panicked as their leader charged into the storm. He was risking his life, making them wonder if he had lost it. Entering that death trap seemed completely insane, as survival was highly unlikely. The red-haired player urged everyone forward, saying the captain trusted Lu Yi. They had to move fast to avoid becoming a useless burden. Suddenly, boom. Deafening blasts and furious roars echoed nearby, then abruptly went dead silent. The team realized their brave leader had truly gone to confront the beast. It was a suicidal move, yet incredibly heroic. Overwhelmed by fear, they fled. The remaining players ran for their lives, determined not to die here. Seeing that Lu Yi still had a full health bar, the blonde prayed, "Please do not die out there." Ahead, the spiked giant was closing in. The monstrous predator bared its teeth, ready to tear him to shreds. Showing zero fear, the battle-hardened captain swung his heavy blade to retaliate. But his confidence shattered instantly when he felt the sheer density of its hide. The beast's natural armor was far too tough to pierce. Enraged, the monster swung a devastating, heavy fist directly at his head. Though cornered under immense pressure, the veteran warrior kept his cool. He leaped backward just in time, but his escape only infuriated the beast. Taking in the chaotic scene, the gentleman quickly realized something. Saving Lu Yi seemed completely impossible, with so many dangerous targets closing in. A massive pack of spotted beasts kept charging, completely swallowing the warrior. Suddenly, Captain 10 froze, dead in his tracks. He witnessed the absolute impossible. Right there stood a bloodthirsty fighter. Gleaming crimson eyes, ready to butcher anything that crossed his path. His vitals and mental strength remained locked at peak levels. That was his ultimate advantage. Pure rage still fueled his actions. Pushing through intense strain, the warrior forced his blessing active. In an instant, every stat skyrocketed, plus 1,400. It was a massive power spike. He shattered the debuffs. Nothing could pin him down now. His next move would be Lysol. With a 50% power boost, he easily cleaved through the entire horde. One swift sweep, unleashing his wild anger, the fighter swung. He blasted the worthless monsters away in every direction. Next, the blue-eyed young man locked his gaze onto the boss. The towering beast lunged forward, absolutely ready for bloody revenge. Captain 10 watched the incoming clash with bated breath. Yet the fighter stood perfectly still, tracking the target. In seconds, the massive creature sprinted across the gap. It got too close. Barely a meter away, the katana gleamed. He didn't flinch. In one rapid move, he snatched the beast's giant claw. The clash was incredibly brave. Suddenly, Shin's boots dug deep. The stone ground cracked beneath his feet. Time to switch. Swapping gear, he activated the pendulum skill to build momentum. His next strike was primed. He calmly raised his weapon. Aiming his pistol, he pinned the beast with one hand. The raging monster thrashed wildly, howling in absolute frustration. But his heavy grip held completely firm. Suddenly, a deafening shot rang out. The lead bullet tore straight through the beast's head, prompting the system. The system chimed. Rebirth was active, priming his next hit. Damage output, over 12,000 points of absolute devastation. Blasts echoed for minutes until the creature lost its footing. Drained of all power, the giant was no longer dangerous. With a massive crash, the terrifying boss finally collapsed. The impact shattered the dry earth, leaving the creature completely lifeless. Luya remained on guard, waiting patiently for his kill confirmation. Slowly, the physical form began to dissolve, dead for sure. This guaranteed certain death, leaving the baffled guild president in shock. He couldn't understand how a mere support class player did this. It made absolutely no sense, but the threat was gone. Convinced of his victory, the emotionless Shin dashed forward. He headed straight for the paralyzed onlooker. Alarmed and terrified, the blond man quickly stumbled back in a rather pathetic display. Standing close, the stern hero calmly told him they must leave. Get out now, noise and chaos erupted everywhere. Hungry beasts looking for a meal still prowled nearby, stunned. The president had no idea what to do, but standing around was obviously not an option, so he chased after the support player as they needed a safe spot. Meanwhile, the rest of the team waited near the entrance of a dungeon right beside a massive blue portal. Every single fighter there was terrified. No one dared to message the guild master, who might still be hiding from those monsters. Panicking, Deadwater suggested giving up and coming back another time, since staying meant none of them might survive. His stressed comrades snapped back that President Ten and Shin were still alive, so they could not give up. Brett noted that since their health bars were still active, they must have used a special skill to survive, but it was only temporary. Still, he wondered why the new kid had drawn so much aggro from those monsters. The anxious fighter grew angry, calling the boy a total disaster, not a teammate. He only caused trouble. Suddenly, Gulliver gasped, pointing out that their commander was finally walking toward the entrance of the safe zone. His words shocked Deadwater, who assumed their lifeless bodies were already lying dead among the rocks. This incredible news brought instant relief to the squad, who deeply respected President Ten, but the red-haired man barked out in a panic, yelling that they had to prepare for a fight because they might be dragging a whole horde of monsters behind them. Right then, the heavy door slammed open, and everyone froze in pure terror, but no roars followed. Their stoic commander stepped inside alongside Liu Yi, without a single monster in sight. The stunned team members cheered with joy to see their leader unharmed, fully relieved that he was perfectly fine, glaring at them with deep annoyance. Deadwater silently grumbled that this new guild leader was causing too many issues, throwing a massive wrench into all of his carefully laid plans. The thrilled players praised President Ten for his insane strength, amazed that he had managed to pull the boy out of that deadly trap. The captain silently stared at his brave leader, knowing the squad had no idea what really happened. The quiet hero sat down, completely silent. He finally caught his breath after that brutal battle. Sitting opposite him, the manager announced a 10-minute break before they would all head in to clear out the dungeon together. The overjoyed teammates literally started dancing, feeling absolutely invincible now that their leader was back with them. At that very moment, a resentful Deadwater kept glaring directly at Liu Yi, wishing he could get rid of him immediately. But Liu Yi paid no attention to his gaze, lost deep in his own thoughts. wearing a fake, friendly smile. The trader asked how they had possibly managed to slip away from all those terrifying beasts. In response, the young man just met his gaze. Without saying a word, clearly having no intention of sharing a thing, after activating his unique blessing, all negative and slowing debuffs vanished, and a sly grin spread across his face. Then he completely caught his rival off guard by asking him straight up if he was the one behind all these traps, patting the young. Laughing and patting the man on the shoulder, the redhead swore he would never do that. But deep down inside, he knew perfectly well that he was lying straight to his face. Brazenly lying, the warrior explained that the blessing dispels all negative side effects. It even wipes out the tracking mark that this scoundrel had quietly placed on him. Hearing this, the tense man's face twisted as he realized he had been completely exposed. His cover was blown. The blue-eyed boy pointed out that in their entire group, only Voda could use such a rare technique since it was a rank 40 skill. Grip tightening on his gun, the brave fighter admitted he had been debating something ever since they stepped inside, whether he should just execute this sneaky mole. Standing tall, the player noted that hesitating now would only make him regret the outcome. He could not risk that. Meanwhile, the smiling young man only cared about surviving. He only looked out for himself, which is why the gun was pointed directly right at his target. The trader stood frozen, utterly speechless and tense. He had no idea what to do next. Frustrated, he protested that they were supposed to be allies, asking if Yane was actually planning to pull the trigger. The rest of the team watched the confrontation in shock, yet nobody stepped in. The clever mole planned to play these fools to eliminate the young warrior, since none of them understood how the rare magic of restoration actually worked. A panicked teammate yelled out, demanding to know what Yane was doing. That cry only heightened the dread in the room. Meanwhile, President Ten just sat quietly on a stone ledge, observing the entire drama unfold with cold indifference. A faint smirk crept onto our fearless hero's face as he quietly waited for the mole to step closer. Putting on a victim act, Voda cried out, demanding to know how they had survived the massive monster horde. But our hero offered no explanation, keeping his weapon aimed right at him. Hysterical, the traitor begged the guildmaster to step in and judge this madness. He questioned if they needed a teammate like that, yet the president stayed silent. He was in no rush to decide, calmly weighing his options. The redhead then argued that Yane wanted to be the sole support class in the party. By getting rid of him, Yane could demand whatever rewards he pleased. The actor put on a grand performance, calling the hero a true traitor. In response, the calm Liu Yi did not bother saying a single word to defend himself. Trying to prove his innocence to this crowd was completely pointless. Voda urged the group to replace this dangerous wildcard while they were still near the entrance. Going deeper with such a toxic rat would only spell doom for the raid. Another party member spoke up, suggesting they settle their personal grudges later. Settle it after the mission is over, without jeopardizing the raid. At that moment, the leader of the New Order Guild finally stood up. He silently approached and gently pushed down Shayna's golden pistol. He wanted them to disarm, keeping an icy composure. The powerful leader stared deep into the deceitful eyes of Voda, ready to deliver his final judgment. Instantly, the master fighter lunged forward with blinding speed, stunning everyone present. Voda froze in pure terror, squeezing the scoundrel's neck. The stern guildmaster demanded to know why he was trying to sabotage his relationship with Liu Yi. Choking and terrified, Voda wheezed out, asking what the president was doing. Exactly how much raw strength he actually possessed, the serious leader believed the brave warrior, adding that he was far stronger than the redhead could ever imagine. Mole urged the leader not to get involved with a guy who wanted to attack for no reason. Energetic Blonde was sure that the young player would not act without a good reason. Wuji's total health points rapidly began to decline while Liu Yi silently watched the scene from the sidelines. The Gasping warrior could not understand what this terrifyingly broken ability actually was, finding it impossible to resist. Panic overwhelmed his mind because healing skills failed and no air reached his starving lungs. Slowing down, Wuji felt a strange calmness. His blood circulation failed and his life began slipping away. With one last effort, he tried to fight back, but nothing worked. His eyes closed. Feeling absolutely no sympathy for the dying traitor, Yashin stepped closer, stared right down at him. Finally, the red-haired fighter lost consciousness from a total lack of air, and seconds later, he stopped breathing. The cold-hearted Ten felt no regrets about his actions. Because Wuji was a traitor seeking his own benefit, the noble warrior respected the cold efficiency of his new ally, admiring his sheer nerve. Since very few would dare to execute a traitor, resting on a stone ledge, the fighter thanked them before taking a very quick break from the intense chaos. In response, the blonde leader smiled, feeling a sudden warmth, glad to have stood by his highly reliable ally. Right then, the guild president remembered how, just a short while ago, this brave warrior had saved him from a monster horde. The leader knew that without that timely rescue, they would all be dead, and so he offered Lu Yi a top rank in the guild, promising the powerful recruit elite treatment. The president stared at him with complete sincerity. The polite Ten apologized for executing the traitor Wuji, reminding the president of past clashes between them and some lower-ranking members. But he quickly added that by joining forces with such incredibly overpowered elites, they could easily overlook any old grudges. Meanwhile, the shocked onlookers could not believe their president was practically begging this recruit to sign up, even offering completely unparalleled premium benefits. Nobody understood what made this quiet youth so special, especially since all their elite members had survived brutal selection trials. The highly focused Lu Yi calmly asked the leader what the actual catch was. The puzzled blonde looked him dead in the eye, completely unable to comprehend the bizarre question. The president asked what kind of ridiculous nonsense this was and why he was not asking about the benefits first. The serious warrior replied that he always needed to hear the drawbacks first, since ignoring hidden costs in contracts is a complete rookie mistake. For several seconds, the leader kept his gaze locked on him, silent and expressionless, but then a massive grin broke across the president's face, reassuring him that he would not owe a single dime. It was pretty obvious he did not believe those words. The level-headed Ten knew perfectly well that when the bill came due, this kid would never actually agree. The leader claimed the real price was simply being ready to pay with his life whenever the guild needed Lu. In exchange, he would receive some massive compensation. Suddenly, the bitter-looking warrior warned that stepping into the uncontrolled zone's dungeon would end in a total bloodbath. His grim warning brought instant confusion, slightly alarming the captain, who did not fully grasp what he meant. Instantly, the rest of the team grew incredibly tense, realizing things were growing more hostile by the second. The leader scratched his head and sheepishly laughed that the chances of disaster were extremely low, meaning there was absolutely no reason to worry. Folding his arms right under his chin, a completely blank-faced Eshin muttered that he had heard too many empty promises already and simply could not trust them. Meanwhile, Ten, remaining completely quiet, did not say a single word back, instead sinking deep into his own thoughts. Our hero announced he was down for a temporary alliance, but would never surrender his high-level gear or team up with any of them once this mission ended. One of the annoyed guild members grumbled that he hated these ridiculous terms of membership, especially since this guy's yearly salary would go way over 2 million. His allies started looking at him like he was a total idiot, while the president sighed that nothing could be done about it, though he still called this partnership a win. Hearing this, a small smile crept onto our main character's face as he thanked the leader for his Understanding, smiling right back, the captain gestured, letting the kid know. He was happy to talk to him like a human. If only Liu Yi had known that the gear level heavily dictated future survival, things would have turned out quite differently in his past life. With his current power, the president personally invited him to join the new order, making this guild a fantastic stepping stone. Our fearless warrior felt slightly bad about turning down the grand offer, but his mind is already made up. Honestly, you gotta respect the confidence. Soon, the young man smiled, realizing that the sole reason Ten wanted him in the guild so badly was due to his overwhelming raw power. No doubts there, our young player knew he just had to let his power grow steadily, stay alive, and then more and more strong allies would naturally flock to him. Meanwhile, the blonde fighter focused on scanning the floating system screen, his expression turning incredibly serious. Beijucheng and Trensho kept spamming comments in the chat, discussing the dangerous dungeon where the team currently stood. The highly anxious guild leader pressed a fist to his mouth, clearly regretting a major slip-up he was struggling to process. The stressed leader suddenly remembered that clearing this place might actually require triggering a completely hopeless scenario, completely flipping the script. Talk about a massive twist. He faced the reality that his first attempt to win over Eshin completely failed. Major setback, no good news. Still, he reminded himself that his own combat strength was his ultimate trump card. He was not about to back down now. No way. Over in the chat, his guildmates debated cost versus reward while planning to send scouts deep into the uncontrolled zone for a rare power membrane. Meanwhile, the highly focused guild leader carefully analyzed every single text, trying to piece together his next move. The captain contemplated bringing Jewel, who got along quite well. Cooperating with others is key. If a massacre starts, he must check the hero. Luckily, after joining the new order squad, Liu Yi finally witnessed their raw, unfiltered power. The raid officially began, but wait, the support fighter seemed a bit strange. He refused to remove his forehead bandage, even with sweat constantly pouring down. Meanwhile, the damage dealer effortlessly sliced through enemies with dual swords. It was quite impressive. Soon after, the main attacker went to work. He picked off monsters from the shadows with silent, deadly precision. Thanks to their flawless teamwork, the entire dungeon was cleared in just 4 hours. With every zone completely wiped clean, our hero finally reached level 50. This unlocked his special rebirth power tree, giving him a massive choice. He could either reset his cooldowns or activate a powerful scanner. It would track all resources and life forms within a 1-kilometer radius every hour. By day 3, he hit his target rank. By day 6, they made a massive discovery. The group finally tracked down the exact target the chairman had been searching for. It was a hidden dungeon deep inside the lawless zone, and a new face arrived. This powerful warrior was sent to take the place of the fallen Wuji. The newcomer sprinted forward at incredible speed, eager to join the main group. With a dramatic leap, the agile fighter landed right in front of them. He really knew how to make an entrance. The entire squad stopped what they were doing to stare at him. A level 56 warrior named Jewel stood before them, dripping with confidence. The crew was thrilled, their captain was finally here. But he greeted them with a smug, sarcastic smirk. "Why did you brainless chickens move without me?" That was classic Jewel. Pure silence, the squad just stared at him in sheer disbelief. Realizing he sounded completely ridiculous, the captain waved his hand. He clarified that his insult was not meant for Chairman Ten, who glared back. The stoic blonde leader stared back with zero emotion. Liu Yi just watched silently from the background. He analyzed everything quietly, carefully taking mental notes of their overall power. He was looking at Thunder, legendary ranker, and one of the top 5 players. This was the elite whose mere clone had single-handedly crushed the Mirror Kingdom. Liu Yi had no clue how strong Dan Chang actually was in the real world. But then, get ready for this, the legendary ranker walked straight toward him. He got right in the boy's face, asking if he was truly the famous Yashine. With a smirk, he mentioned that the chairman claimed this kid was incredibly powerful. So strong he might almost compare to his little toe. Chairman 10 was horrified. He stood there silently, dreading the chaos these insulting words would trigger. The rest of the team watched the tense situation with wide eyes and open mouths. Jules' loud, arrogant mockery had deeply angered the quiet, powerful hero. But instead of a verbal comeback, our warrior made a silent, deadly vow. He would slice off that mocking finger and take his life along with it. The stressed blonde chairman barked at Thunder to cut out the absolute nonsense. He explained that while the guy was a loudmouth, there was no need to fight. But the sarcastic Dan Chong simply laughed, wondering if the kid was truly that tough. If they were even as strong as his pinky, that was already pretty impressive. Keeping a totally straight face, the commander ordered him locked away in a special dungeon. 2 guards shoved him forward, mocking him to prove his big words in action. They dragged him along, eager to watch him fail under real pressure. Staring at the portal, the president wondered why he ever let this eccentric guy join. But the man realized this portal led straight to the secret dungeon he wanted. This was the exact gateway he had been searching for all this time. He stood there frozen for a few seconds, taking deep, quiet breaths. The chairman admitted this was his true goal from the very beginning. He promised their new faction would always be deeply indebted to Yi Shane. Still, the young man wondered what secrets the chairman was really chasing here. This unusual zone held some deep secret, and he knew it. Without wasting another second, the blond man made his move and stepped forward. A wave of pure excitement washed over him as he neared the portal. He muttered that it was finally time to dive straight into the action. In his previous life, the main character never got to meet the leader of 10. That meant he missed out on a massive amount of crucial information. There was no telling how this powerful man treated other people. Stuck among bottom-tier rookies, he had no way of knowing the truth. He only had rumors to go on, painting their commander as a heartless monster. But after working directly under the president for just a few days, Liu Yi started to feel like they might actually get along pretty well. Still, he shook off the thought, knowing reality was far more complicated. True friendship only happens when people share the same goals and ideals. These soft thoughts only came up because he genuinely enjoyed working in a team. But he knew better in this harsh world. Everyone but his sister was a potential enemy. Vigilance was absolutely necessary at all times. He reminded himself that the Organization 10 was ultimately his enemy. There was absolutely no room for friendly feelings between them. Stepping firmly into the portal, he resolved to do whatever it took to survive. No matter what trials lay ahead, he would push through and make it out alive. Meanwhile, a group of pleased scientists celebrated their highly successful incubation process. Their experimental breakthrough was nothing short of an absolute scientific miracle. Supercomputers had somehow managed to bring a mythical consciousness into reality. The director praised the rapid progress, quickly asking about the brainwashing status. But the reply was grim. The mental programming had utterly failed to take hold. Suddenly, a panicked researcher screamed out as the subject began to move on its own. With a terrifying shatter, the containment glass exploded into 1,000 dangerous shards. Just like that, the entire lab is thrown into total, deadly chaos. A terrified scientist dropped to his knees, begging them to stop the escaping beast. But nobody could move, frozen in pure horror as chilling sounds echoed behind them. Knowing his fate was sealed, he desperately shrieked to destroy the target. But no one in the room had any idea how to stop such a monster. In a final act of desperation, a scientist slammed down on the red emergency button, hoping to trigger their final defense, just as a team of fighters finally emerged. Stepping through the portal, they land inside a highly dangerous underground chamber. This place is dead zone dangerous. After the cutscene, Liu Yi looks around. Realizing that things will be rough, the cautious President 10 stands still, searching the room for anything useful to wrap up this deadly quest. They must transport the source of life directly toward the monster's core. That means navigating straight into the screaming snake's membrane, but there's a catch. The crucial vial of yellow liquid cannot be dropped from their inventory, and their very lives are linked directly to it. For a while, everyone just freezes. Taking in the eerie atmosphere, the captain quickly realizes the ideal play. Every single player needs to reach that core completely unscathed. Since everyone has a bottle, keeping them safe is crucial, staring at his own glass. The fearless commander knows it is finally time to get to work. Our hero has only ever seen 2 dungeons with cinematic cutscenes before this, making him wonder if this zone with Y is another unique hidden area. Right then, a monstrous screaming snake glares down at the party. The players instantly freeze in sheer terror as cold panic sets in. Their stressed leader barks orders to immediately form up and hold position. There is no backing down now. The furious beast opens its jaws wide and lets out a deafening screech. That is how it got its legendary name. Under the acoustic assault, several players drop their fragile glass items, which shatter instantly. Players clutch their throbbing heads in agony, desperately fighting to stay conscious. In the middle of this, the President gets a grim notification that his teammates, Fresh Meatloafer, Natural Curls, and Anonymous Monster are dead. 10 stands completely stunned, realizing 3 bottles are shattered on the first wave. This is bad. Suddenly, a system alert warns they are under the creature's sonic influence, forcing them to endure the ghostly scream. This is a real test. An incredibly focused Eshin keeps his cool, fully prepared to engage in battle. But before leaping forward, he must plan his next moves carefully. Suddenly, the brave Thunder declares he will take down the beast and avenge their fallen. The rest of the party worries deeply for their reckless commander, knowing he is rushing into danger without any solid information on the enemy. Furious, Julie screams that he will slice this wretched beast to ribbons. Avenging his lost friends is his only focus now, leaping high into the air. Right in front of the serpent's face, Danching brings his blade down hard. But his strike does absolutely nothing. The frustration is intense. He never expected to find himself completely powerless against a boss like this. But the ruthless predator merely parts its massive jaws, preparing to devour the helpless warrior right in front of his crew. The beast strikes, sending a wave of sheer panic through the team. His horrified companions saw this disaster coming, but could not hold back. Their hot-headed leader in time, with its prey taken, the screaming serpent begins to vanish, leaving the remaining fighters utterly lost. The trial has barely started, yet they have already lost 4 key members. Moments later, the massive predator begins to slowly reappear. The beast slipped away into the thick forest to rest, leaving strange liquid behind. The spilled fluid suddenly began merging together into a single, glowing sphere. Tiny tendrils shot out from the ball, stretching toward the group. These thin threads lightly brushed against each team member, leaving them completely baffled. Meanwhile, President 10 still clutched the prized life force bubble he managed to save. Its glowing life force shifted from yellow to deep red, altering its properties. The leader realized they didn't all need to survive to clear this zone. They just had to bring together all 10 fragments of the life source. Suddenly, a shout rang out. The captain was still alive. But Liu Yi remained deep in thought, analyzing the true quest parameters. He suspected the guild leader wanted a perfect clear at all costs. And believe me, our hero's sharp instincts were absolutely dead on. He recalled the system announcement after they cleared the previous zone. It seemed 10 wanted to secure total control over the mainframe power. The worried party argued about rescuing their captain from the beast's stomach. With no clear plan, 10 argued that if Thunder survived the initial swallow, he would surely survive inside, meaning they should focus on the main objective. He insisted their priority was reaching the destination, not saving their fallen comrade. Shocked by the heartless decision, Liu Yi never expected this from the guild president. A long-haired ally spoke up next, his face filled with utter surprise. He insisted they must succeed at any cost, prompting the group to charge. The party rushed forward, knowing they had to eliminate the screaming snake immediately. Meanwhile, 10 realized that if delivering all 10 pieces wasn't required, they could combine them to summon an even more terrifying beast. Beside him, the silent and composed Ying dashed forward at full speed. Ying stayed completely quiet, keeping thoughts locked away. The focused leader quietly calculated his moves, certain this was the key to victory. 20 minutes later, one of the warriors shouted that they were close. He yelled that Jewel was nearby, moving toward them at an unbelievable speed. Now watch closely, our alert hero listened intently, sensing something was deeply wrong. Their nervous leader suddenly cried out that it wasn't the captain at all. It was actually the monster that swallowed him, so everyone needed to be careful. Suddenly, a treacherous snake with its mouth wide open leaped from the woods. The sudden ambush left 10 completely frozen and confused for a moment. Immediately, the monster launched a bloody shadow, strike directly at the guild leader. 10 quickly ordered the team to hold formation, while thunder attacked from within. At that moment, the giant serpent lowered its head to scan the battlefield. It stared directly at them, creating a deeply unsettling and strange sight. The brave warriors drew their weapons and charged straight into the fray. They showed incredible courage, ready to fight until the very last breath. They refused to fail the commander who trusted them. The impact sent massive shockwaves vibrating through their arms. The monster's skin was incredibly tough, sending painful shocks through their hands. Every fighter pushed past their limits to bring down the screaming terror. And with one final push, they did it. The struggling beast thrashed its massive tail, trying to disorient it. Opponents, 2 frontline fighters, took direct hits, crying out in intense pain before getting thrown aside. In response, Brave Bandage quickly whipped out a weapon to provoke the rampaging monster. At the same time, he kept on the move, constantly dodging to avoid taking any severe damage. The agile fighter scanned his surroundings, making sure the massive predator never got too close. He caught sight of the fearless President 10, who stood staring sternly right into the eyes of the giant ahead of them. Suddenly, the massive serpent opened its jaws wide, letting out another deafening, bone-chilling shriek that was absolutely unbearable to hear. Gripped by tension, Bandage quickly reached down to his belt and grabbed a vial containing his vital life energy, but in a horrifying twist, the warriors' bottle shattered to pieces, completely destroyed by the beast's sonic scream. Instantly, his body began dissolving into thin air, leaving him in absolute terror. The 3 remaining teammates watched in pure horror at the sudden demise of their fallen friend who had risked everything for them. The leader and Ehane stood frozen, unable to speak, struggling to comprehend the tragedy before their eyes. They simply couldn't process it. Then, a team member brought up the Thunder's warning, realizing the serpent's internal defenses were far too powerful for them to deal any real damage. Now, the beast turned its cold gaze toward their silent leader, who viewed this deadly threat as some system glitch. The sweating blonde warrior realized the monster could wipe them all out with sound waves, meaning their survival depended entirely on its next move. He anxiously wondered if they'd all get wiped out right after entering this deadly dungeon. Right then, the giant serpent stirred once more, slithering slowly but loudly toward some unknown direction. The remaining fighters stood frozen in a line, silently watching the deadly viper turn around and slowly fade away, confused by this. One of them wondered why the shrieking serpent would suddenly spare them after causing so much damage. Suddenly, a glowing yellow orb of life energy appeared. The air pulsing with an intense, powerful aura, sprouting magical tendrils. The mysterious sphere began to merge, gently touching everyone standing around it. The Commander realized the monster wasn't testing them, and at the same time he carefully analyzed the red bottle, his expression growing deeply serious as he thought about their dire situation. The Pens Offlu struggled to understand the best path forward for the chairman if they couldn't defeat the shrieking serpent. Breaking the tense silence, the leader ordered everyone to stay alert, announcing they had a window of opportunity to reach the research institute and complete their mission. After 20 minutes of intense running, one of the anxious comrades reported. The giant serpent was close. Instantly, Sirius 10 ordered the twin blade user to shatter his vital life energy vial, sparking instant shock among the remaining allies. Another teammate nervously pleaded with the chairman, saying they couldn't afford another casualty when so few of them remained, but the cold, stern president argued that numbers didn't matter. They couldn't defeat the snake without utilizing extreme speed. Hearing this, a terrified warrior made the ultimate sacrifice, shattering his vial of vital life energy and perishing instantly. The remaining fighters looked on, realizing they had to thank their captain, whose cold strategy was keeping them alive. They had tracked down the boss's offer. Previously, the young hero refused to pay for his gear, but if Tennu knows the perfect way through, he will definitely strike him at the institute. Up ahead, the blonde chairman was running ahead, shouting that the target building was finally in sight. There was no stopping. They charged ahead, approaching the facility they needed to secure immediately. Right at the front was their fearless leader, who was not even afraid of the threat of death hanging over them. Lu Yi quietly realized something. He could not let them corner and execute him. Suddenly, he stopped dead, instantly. Drawing the eyes of his allies, a tense Tennu asked the youngster what was wrong, ordering him to climb the steps alive. The young warrior brought up the perfect completion of the task again, and Tennu looked into his eyes with absolute gravity. The young fighter asked why the chairman refused to share his true goal. Lu Yi decided to sow discord among the group first, planning to eliminate everyone later on, which was a solid plan. Suddenly, Don Shen's thunder crackled over their frequencies, signaling his relief at finally escaping. A faint smirk crossed the blonde chairman's face upon hearing this, though he quickly tried to mask it. Tennu claimed the dungeon's level was simply too high, wanting only to finish the mission without any hidden agendas. He warned that while danger was guaranteed inside, encountering a deadly snake outside was far more likely. Lu Yi had the option to wait outside, but for several tense seconds he just stood there silently. A nervous fighter demanded to know where Lu Yi got the idea that Tennu wanted to harm him, and if he truly believed the guild was trying to trick him. His comrade agreed, loudly reminding him they had worked together for a very long time, and trust was never an issue. The kid was clearly imagining things, or was he? Warrior silently weighed whether he should strike the three of them. Lu Yi calculated that Zhou would arrive at this location in 10 minutes, given his slower movement speed, having estimated the timing of the screaming snake's imminent strike. The young fighter chose to provoke his allies before Tennu met up with the thunder. The blonde chairman muttered that he would not force him, reiterating that they just had to finish the quest. His comrades scoffed, calling the youngster useless trash who could never be trusted when things got tough, snapping that the guild would easily do without him. Meanwhile, Lu Yi realized that combining his freeze buff with his special blessing would let him wipe them all out, but if he made a single mistake, his faction alliance would be ruined. Yet, if he did not strike, all of his hard work would be entirely wasted. The cold chairman watched him in silence, attempting to read his next moves. The dangerous president sneered that without their agreement, the young fool might as well be considered dead. Hearing this, Lu Yi knew his choice was clear. Instantly, he unleashed his combat abilities and stat boosts, charging straight into the fray. He attacked, while the calm Tennu activated his bloody shadow barrier. At that exact moment, the other members realized the kid was actually attacking them. decided to strike, remaining completely confident in their own victory. And yet they decided to attack, fully confident in their victory, but then one of them is completely pinned down by Yin, who leaves absolutely no room. For mistakes, the merciless warrior swings his blade hard, slicing his target in two. Meanwhile, Little Fist collapses, fatally beaten, hitting the cold stone and starting to disintegrate. Nobody understands how this is even possible. Then a brutal sting attack lands from the next faction member. But his strike misses entirely, failing to leave even a single scratch on. Who grips the hilt of his katana tightly, preparing to unleash his ultimate execution. With dead, hollow eyes, the swordsman strikes without a second thought, erasing his enemy before they can even realize what hit them. The system screen flashes, confirming another kill on the battlefield. As thunder shakes the entire facility, the atmosphere grows incredibly heavy. Luya looks absolutely terrifying, his cold glare capable of crushing anyone with mere intimidation. Dropping into a low stance, he prepares to smash through the solid wall, blocking his path forward. Without pausing, Yashing charges right through, shattering the brick and stone. With ease, the minimap indicates the chairman is close by. But our hero slashes through the open air, barely missing him. He grumbles that the boss's evasion skills are basically a cheat, while a notification shows his freeze buff has just run out. For several minutes, he stands ready with his blade, scanning the area. For any movement, he yells out, "Is the chairman just a coward?" Hiding like a cornered rat, still searching, he gets another system alert. His main blessing has officially expired too. Tightening his grip, he warns the hidden boss that running away will eventually become a habit. Suddenly, Danson steps into view, instantly drawing our fighter's focus. Checking the radar, the young warrior realizes he's walking right into a deadly pincer movement. Right then, the smirking guild leader steps from the darkness, calling the young man remarkably brave. Ten chimes in, noting that when the brave kid fought those man-eating leopards, he showed his whole hand, meaning sacrificing 2 pawns was worth it. Smirking coldly, the white-haired schemer looks Luya straight in the eye, muttering that it is finally time to end this, just like that. The bloodthirsty thunder gets the green light to rip the brat to shreds. The katana-wielding leader charges right beside him, their expressions dead serious, but our warrior stands his ground against both of them, relying on his peak reflexes to dodge their synchronized strikes. He glares back with absolute confidence, trusting his raw strength to carry him through. The mocking jewel wonders if the chairman got weak, or if they were both just complete weaklings from the very beginning, prompting Ten to snap at him. Suddenly, the system burns 2,000 knowledge points, raising all of his attributes by 1,000%. Thunder laughs, shouting that this feels much better, while the panicked blonde orders him to strike immediately. The boss boasts about his rising power, claiming his blade has stored so much energy that he is invincible. Grinning, the arrogant boss tells the kid to feel honored to die. Meet their end by this weapon's edge. The assistant quickly advised him to charge up the weapon's energy and spend knowledge points to boost the strike's overall speed and damage. Instantly, the cooldown reset and freeze buff kicked in, a massive shift that could completely turn the tide. A small but highly explosive blast shook the area, and Liu Yi vanished from sight for a brief moment. High on alert, he scanned the area, trying to spot his opponent. A second later, the daredevil materialized right in front of him. Frantically forcing himself to rely on his blessing, he commanded the system to instantly max out all his attributes, a desperate yet powerful play. As a result, 4,000 points vanished, but the main character's stats skyrocketed exponentially. Eyes flashing a crimson red, he poured everything into his sword strike. Strike, the fearless Danson confidently went on to tell the chairman that his trust was well placed, boasting that he still held a major trump card. Just then, explosive compensation kicked in, a passive effect ensuring that Absolutely no one could hurt him before he struck. Yane's desperate attempt to land a blow failed because the opponent's technique completely paralyzed him, rendering him helpless. Grinning, Thunder mocked the kid, shouting that he had baited him like a total fool. Refusing to yield, our hero glared back, staring into his enemy's eyes while plotting his next move, leaving the stunned Jew behind. He charged with eyes full of hatred toward the faction leader, but the cunning enemy simply smirked, activating his power of unification, keeping a smug and highly mocking smirk painted on his face. With this ability, the blonde found himself forced into sync with Danson, who had absolutely no clue what was happening. Just then, Liu Yi's buff and freeze effect expired, unlocking his health bar and knowledge points. Arrogant as always, Thunder admitted the chairman's skill was actually pretty strong, claiming it almost matched his own power. Meanwhile, our silent hero closely watched his opponent's movements, analyzing their patterns. Suddenly, he leapt backward to create some safe distance. The young fighter realized his enemies were incredibly well prepared, suspecting they had planned this showdown long ago. The leader laughed, claiming they were just being cautious, and that a weak kid like him wasn't even worthy of such careful preparation. Refusing to waste breath on empty chatter, our hero quickly activated the pendulum and gripped his pistol tightly. With a smug grin, the enemy asked if the fool planned to shoot from that distance, laughing at the absurdity. Earlier, the enemy heard that the hero possessed the arrest skill, mockingly inviting him to try it out right then and there. Meanwhile, the system warned him that his compensation buff and first blessing had ended. Though a reserve remained, the confident Danson dared his opponent to fire, while a nervous Ten warned him that the shield had expired. The guy readied his grip. The chairman quietly whispered to his ally that this weapon possessed its own crazy abilities, making its attack power absolutely insane. The overconfident bully scoffed, viewing it as a cheap gun he could easily survive. The leader suggested waiting out the active skill, then immediately ending the kid's life. Suddenly shocked, Grum froze in, bound tight, realizing he was locked in chains from which he simply could not escape. Staring at this makeshift prison, the tense fighter asked himself, in absolute shock, how this was even possible. He assumed Shane's sole weapon was a pistol, and his ally loudly wondered how the enemy had just executed a skill with a sword. With 5 seconds remaining on his blessing, the main character said goodbye to his opponent. The panicked president screamed for his comrade to somehow get out of the trap, but it was useless. Fortunately, he possessed a cheat skill to avoid death. No panic here. The leader yelled that while they were frozen, the kid would try to strike, and all he had to do was touch their vital bottles. The brave warrior shouted that he had bubbles on his back, begging the blonde man to activate the protective bloody shadow shell, but the skill was completely spent. Right then, direct hit, Lu's deadly projectile pierced straight through Jewel, killing the chairman instantly, and heavily shattering those critical glass bottles containing their very source of life. Stunned, Thunder could not believe this, but he desperately had to gather his. He had to survive. His legs were shaking violently, but he held on, struggling to keep his balance while taking slow, deliberate steps backward, slamming his back hard against the wall. The nervous Don Shan tried to calm down, though it was incredibly difficult. Fading away rapidly, the enemy admitted defeat, but vowed he would return for absolute vengeance. Right after, the cold hero received a system notification that his Grom was dead. His teammate had been killed, but the victor confidently stepped forward to inspect the loot left behind after the enemy's demise. Below him, he spotted 2 strange glowing spheres marked with mysterious question marks on them. Though he had won, he felt no real rush of excitement, likely because he never truly finished off his opponents. The young warrior knew that in the future they would hunt him down for revenge, prompting him to wonder what exactly drew such powerful enemies to his location. Still, as long as the young player remained inside the game, his rivals could not touch him. allowing him to keep growing stronger, while real-world threats from his enemies still loomed. They would have to wait until the Primordial Kingdom conquered everything. Clutching the magic sphere tightly in his hand, the satisfied warrior smiled. Filled with supreme confidence, suddenly a strange rustling sound echoed right behind him. A nightmare appears, large glowing red eyes stared through the pitch darkness. Instantly on guard, Lu leapt backward away from the treasure, sensing the imminent danger. For the next few seconds, he kept dodging back to track the beasts. Lightning-fast movements, the deadly serious fighter was fully aware of his situation. He stood completely alone. Before him hissed a massive, screeching serpent. Down with a mocking sneer, sensing zero threat from the tiny human, suddenly the massive monster whipped its tail wildly and began crawling away, which looked incredibly bizarre. Completely stunned, the young warrior froze in place. Jaw dropped as he desperately tried to make sense of this behavior. Then, he remembered that he had shattered the bubbles, holding the vital life source of. That meant one thing: the apex predator was now actively targeting him. Lu knew he had to move fast. Without his squad, he was entirely on his own to clear the quest within 20 minutes or face absolute doom. A few minutes later, Shane rushed into the laboratory, spotting something strange in a back room. He spotted a round glass container with a peculiar opening in it. Right away, this young warrior examined the chamber closely, trying to figure out what it was for. Clearly, it was some kind of incubator device. He might really need this. Gripping a small bottle of liquid, the cautious young man realized the entire facility was completely empty of both staff and monsters. He quickly realized that the only active resident here was that screeching serpent. He looked around. Was he really all alone in here? Was that monster truly the sole occupant? In his previous run, Shane faced a creepy puppet. Now he strongly suspected that very doll had designed the whole trial just to mess with the challengers. Then, Shane recalled that this special zone had its own unique rules. What if this task was actually assigned by a living creature residing in the shadows? Looking back at the doll's trial, it seemed like she was just playing cruel games with them. Yet the secret to a perfect clear was simply to satisfy her hidden desires. This realization made Shane wonder if success required humoring the bizarre whims of their bosses. That would explain the snake's odd behavior. It could have wiped out his entire team, but only killed a few before fleeing. It was almost like a taunt. To achieve a perfect rating here, he had to find a way to please that giant, fanged beast. Talk about a weird challenge. But Shane had no clue what the massive predator actually wanted. Talk about a headache. Still, he realized something. If the quest came directly from the giant serpent itself, then hatching this new beast was not about slaying the snake, but raising a companion. Perhaps the creature was incredibly lonely, or maybe it just wanted to escape this prison. Stunned by his own thoughts, Shane paused to reflect on this wild theory. Why did he suddenly jump to such a weird conclusion? Yet he could not ignore the possibility. Honestly, it seemed highly likely. If the giant serpent could easily navigate the laboratory, then hatching a companion might not even be necessary. But if it was stuck, everything changed. If the beast was trapped, Shane would have to act fast or face its wrath. Specifically, he would have to wait 20 minutes to see if the monster would return. To tear him apart, summoning his courage, he placed the vial inside the glass incubator. If the quest triggered, he would complete it. If not, he would find another way. He could try using his game guide to lure the beast back. Meanwhile, rival players had already reached level 50, even though Shane felt he was catching up to them. The gap between them was still pretty massive. He had a lot of ground to cover. Shane knew that once he reached rank 5, high-tier gear would become absolutely essential. He would also need a solid squad. Right now, the top rankers were banding together, and they were not going to waste any time. Fortunately, Shane had a secret weapon. He kept a powerful upgrade gem in reserve, which he could exchange for rare items. Even though each boost cost 100 special essences, it was worth it for a quick victory. Still, the young warrior had a strong feeling he should save those spheres for later. Instead, he chose to trade his leftover points for 3 special pearls from the system shop. Upgrading his gear this way had a tiny 1% success rate. A real gamble. Smiling, the young warrior began to wonder if he could actually pull off a miracle with such incredibly terrible odds on his side. He managed to subdue the soul. Taking a few calm steps forward, he kept walking. He calmly pondered his options, figuring out his next move. Suddenly, Liu Yi's eyes widened as he realized something. The screaming snake was close. He immediately scanned the area. Ready to fight at any second, he knew the monster was close. It had been waiting outside the institute, choosing not to enter. Liu Yi decided to investigate, quickly running to the iron railing. Standing right at the iron railing, he told himself that he must keep the enemy waiting. After 3 minutes, Liu Yi decided it was finally time to act. The massive creature slowly began crawling toward the main entrance now. Its heavy movements were still loud and clear, then it suddenly stopped. The predator waited patiently, sensing Liu Yi was about to appear. It flashed a malicious, cunning grin that looked absolutely terrifying. And just like that, our hero stepped out. His legs shook with nervous excitement, but he fought it. Liu Yi stared fearlessly right into the eyes of the monster. He refused to back down, matching its gaze. Staring directly into those glowing red eyes, he wondered what to say. He knew things would get awkward if the monster could not talk. But the giant beast shocked him by suddenly speaking out loud. It asked why he had not completed the quest so easily yet. Liu Yi hesitated to answer, though his growing confidence made him stand a lot taller. Forcing a smile with a slightly shaky voice, he finally spoke up. He said he figured the giant snake wanted to leave. Hearing this, the massive predator violently whipped its giant tail around. It shattered the stone ground below, kicking up thick dust. This terrifying show of power deeply alarmed the young fighter right away. For a few brief seconds, the fighter just stood there completely frozen. He just watched in pure shock, his mouth hanging wide open. He was amazed by its power, realizing players stood no chance. The beast then hissed at him, asking if the boy knew a way. Liu Yi wondered if the beast truly wanted help or was just mocking him. Quite nervous, he explained that the beast must accept him as its master. Becoming his master was the only way to get out, and if the beast refused, he would simply finish the quest, but if it agreed, they had a deal. He would use his pendulum. The giant snake raised its massive head. Its glowing red eyes stared down, asking if he was worthy. Our hero honestly said no, but insisted it was their only choice. Clenching his jaw, Liu Yi realized the tension was growing dangerous. Things were getting too dangerous, and he needed to finish this now. He stood his ground while the massive viper looked ready to strike him. Suddenly, a surprising system notification popped up in front of him. The screaming snake actually wanted Liu Yi to become its master. Not gonna lie, this twist is a massive relief for our hero. Right then, he became its true owner, and a new prompt appeared. To escape this dungeon, he had to secure a skill called Soul Submission. This beast was practically a walking natural disaster, sporting absolutely legendary stats. In a calm tone, the snake assured him they could now leave without any trouble. Our unflappable hero agreed, wanting to finish this quest as soon as possible. Staring at the glowing sphere, he knew everything rested on his next move. He quickly glanced at the incubator, realizing there was no time to lose. With the clock ticking, Shine officially became the master of the mighty viper. Instantly, the dungeon quest vanished, proving she was the one who issued it. Before this, Shine avoided using the Pearl Glossary to protect his location. But securing such an insanely powerful companion was a massive stroke of luck. Before defeating Wei, Shine had no idea what kind of power lay ahead. If his enemies had been truly powerful, he might have met his end. Instead, he had to rely entirely on luck, to change the unbendable rules. But rewriting the system's laws was supposed to be completely out of the question. Out of nowhere, the system offered our shocked hero a jaw-dropping choice. Did he want to use his special rights to rewrite the glossary rules? Barely believing his eyes, he slammed the confirm button on the holographic screen. In a flash of blinding light, the item in his palm began to glow. Shine stared in absolute disbelief, his jaw dropping as a brilliant aura flared up. Even the snake picked up on the strange noises and grew highly alert. A mysterious question mark suddenly materialized right on top of the glowing sphere. This strange anomaly now allowed him to add customized entries to any gear. He had no clue what was happening, but the luck was undeniable. Honestly, who wouldn't jump at a broken system exploit like this? Without hesitating, the young fighter seized the moment to upgrade his trusty weapon. As a result, his pistol received a massive boost in destructive firepower. For someone obsessed with constantly growing stronger, this upgrade was pure perfection. Shine watched with pure satisfaction as all his plans fell beautifully into place. Watching everything go this smoothly was a massive reason to celebrate. With a quiet smirk, he marked the mission as a complete success. He gripped the legendary pendulum of wisdom, feeling far more confident in his own strength. Raising his weapon, a satisfied Shine assured the snake that their trial was over. At long last, the curtains were closing on this incredibly intense dungeon run. A knowing smile spread across his face as he claimed yet another victory. Naturally, the system announced a flawless victory, showering him with rewards. Tons of experience points, rare essences, and high-tier loot flooded into his inventory. His combat power hit 120 points as his system membrane expanded. This major breakthrough instantly unlocked a powerful and brand new architecture skill. Moments later, Shine stepped out into a lawless zone, completely unharmed. A confident grin spread across his face, feeling like an absolute god. Deep in thought, our unstoppable warrior began making his way back. He headed toward the city of Mushu under the warm morning sun. Only 17 days remained before the game fully merged with reality. Shine was utterly exhausted from grinding inside that dungeon for days. Aside from quick power naps, he had been working nonstop to clear it. He had barely eaten, but he was only 3 levels away from level 60. He had also obtained a screaming snake, making him curious about On's progress. She was hunting for power, but surely she succeeded since a whole week had already passed. Dragging himself out of bed, he decided to check on her. He wondered if he was spending way too little time with his sister lately. Ever since she started playing, he only explained the basic power before leaving. He had just trained completely alone. Then a knock came, making Lou wonder if they should train together instead, but as he stepped inside, he froze. Yun was telling Nana about checking the quality of something extremely important. For her brother, seeing this, the flushed and completely startled boy had no idea how to react. He stood there, speechless and totally shocked before spinning around and fleeing the room, practically about to pass out. He quickly decided to just meet his sister inside the game instead. He rushed straight back to his capsule. Soon, Sheen was utterly exhausted. Since the girls were offline, he decided to drop them a quick message. He wanted to check in while focusing on his next main priority. He had to upgrade his gear and rest up before starting new quests. Reaching level 57 unlocked great equipment, but there was a major catch. Our warrior had no idea how much dungeon essence he actually needed. If he fell short, he would have to pay, but his guild payout was still delayed. Suddenly, Raging Burst sent him 100,000 coins. The message stated that since his level was fine, the mission succeeded. This made him highly suspicious, especially when President 10 requested a meeting. The guild leader claimed he wanted to sincerely apologize for everything. Sheen wondered if their massive defeats pushed them to seek a truce. After all, a mutual alliance could bring some major benefits to both. The leader of the new order wanted no more beef with him. He claimed circumstances forced his hand, and our hero felt no anger. He had lost nothing, but the cautious Sheen still felt quite wary. He tried to figure out why this blonde president wanted his favor. It had to be because of his incredible, game-breaking combat power. But he had no time for politics when his priority was upgrading. He aimed to become the most overpowered player in the entire world. Suddenly, a notification popped up and opened automatically on his screen. It was a message from On, stating that she and her companion had obtained incredible power, wielding a giant axe and deadly twin blades. Intrigued, Lu traveled to the Mirror Zone to spectate their upcoming match. A massive crowd had gathered, watching a heated standoff unfold on screen. Some poor guy got cornered for insulting a top-tier guild beauty. What a mess. The crowd was getting restless because this was a strict safe zone. PvP was banned, yet she was holding him hostage to punish him. Someone asked why the victim did not just log out of the game. But another player explained that his character avatar would remain completely stuck. Just then, onlookers gasped as the powerful beauties stepped onto the battlefield. After completely dominating the arena with an absolute streak of massive victories, the glorious champions were finally stepping out. Enthusiastic fans were screaming, begging to marry these newly crowned goddesses in real life. They were just that magical. The fragrant goddess had completely crushed her rival. Her ally, Passionate Desire, easily handled the rest. These two fierce fighters were actually Leo's sister Ayan and her best friend. Hang Naya had proven they were both absolute powerhouses. Stunned spectators wondered how girls this gorgeous could also be so incredibly strong. Watching from the crowd, Leo instantly recognized them, utterly shocked by their sudden appearance. They were suddenly famous. Leo couldn't believe his eyes. How did they get famous so fast? The lovely Ayan waved. She thanked the crowd but demanded half of their betting winnings. A guy nearby asked his friend a quick question. He wondered if they looked this beautiful in real life, but his buddy didn't care. He didn't care. Another gamer nearby literally started crying. The Mohawk player cried, admitting that the thought of them marrying anyone else hurt. Pure jealousy, the ash-haired player let out a heavy sigh. He patted A. Shane on the shoulder, telling him those girls were out of their leg. With a smirk, he joked that they could only meet girls like that in their dreams. Hearing this, Leo was pretty surprised, but he couldn't help but chuckle. He smiled, thinking the crowd's obsession was getting a little out of hand. The guy next to him scoffed, pointing out that Leo sounded like he lived with them. And right at that very moment, the girls turned their gaze toward the crowd. Ayan squinted through the massive crowd and instantly spotted her beloved older brother. She missed him. Suddenly, she made the crowd gasp. She began walking straight toward him. The ash-haired guy watched in disbelief. Acting cool didn't work. His heart was pounding fast. Suddenly, seeing the goddess walking directly toward them, the blonde boy panicked. He almost fainted. Nobody could understand it. Who was this random guy? Why was their dream girl approaching him of all people? Meanwhile, Leo just stood there, calmly looking right back at his sister. No words, feeling awkward, she offered a small smile. The completely stunned player next to Leo shook his head in absolute disbelief. A couple, he kept his thoughts to himself. Suddenly, Ayan threw her arms around Leo, crying out that she missed him. A massive hug, the entire crowd froze in horror. Jealous players immediately lost their minds, threatening to destroy this lucky scoundrel. Game over for him, not quite. Everything shifted. Ayan cheerfully called Leo her brother, causing everyone to freeze in their tracks. False alarm, they were just close relatives. Hang Naya stood slightly apart from the chaos. A private message pinged her screen. She hesitated. Hang Naya quickly pulled up the digital display to read the incoming text. A mysterious contact reported that their exclusive offer had been flatly rejected. Bad news somewhere else, an angry woman snarled. She dug her nails into raw metal, calling the girl an absolute fool. With them refusing such generous terms, the furious woman declared they had absolutely no place in the firstborn kingdom, ordering her lackeys to summon reinforcements to surround. The troublemakers, meanwhile, a completely unfazed Yun kept hugging Liu Yi, whom she had desperately missed, but in a split second her gaze sharpened. As she caught sight of movement nearby, right at the entrance, two dark figures appeared, clearly entering the Mirror Kingdom with nothing but hostile intentions. The hot-headed, wicked woman immediately started spitting venomous threats at the defenseless girls, hurling every imaginable insult in a display of pure malice. Lost in thought, Yun realized she was still holding onto her brother tightly. Though her mind was still a chaotic mess, she couldn't help but wonder if the crafty young man was secretly cooking up another one of his wild schemes. Feeling a sudden ache, Liu Yi realized from her surprisingly tight grip that his sister had grown ridiculously powerful, almost too strong for him to handle. Suddenly, heavy, rhythmic footsteps echoed through the chamber, signaling that trouble was arriving. A massive crowd of incredibly hostile figures marched straight into the room. Now this is where things start getting incredibly dangerous. Whispering and wondering why on earth the ghost of Lei had suddenly appeared. No one present knew exactly who this ruthless woman, leading the march, was planning to brutally crush today. The cold-blooded Yisheng merely stood by his allies, looking completely unimpressed by the arriving mob. Soon, a large force completely hemmed in the trio. Talk about a massive disadvantage. Across the entire area, keeping his cool, Liu Yi closely analyzed his new opponents while the arrogant guild leader locked her eyes directly onto his, attempting to gauge the true depth of his power. Undeterred, our hero shifted into a solid stance, throwing his left arm out to shield the girls, and signaling that he would shield them even if it cost him his life. The calm and steady Yun gently tapped her brother's arm, leaning in close. To whisper something crucial, she quietly explained that this woman was actually after her, and begged him to let her handle the fight herself. Meanwhile, the wicked leader spat that today they would be brought to their knees to beg for mercy or suffer banishment from the Yuan world forever. Liu Yi demanded to know the issue, and Hang explained that they had simply refused to work with this crazy woman who was now acting out of petty spite. The hot-tempered lady barked orders to her subordinates to corner the girls so she could crush them immediately. Suddenly, an onlooker yelled out, questioning how they could break the rules so blatantly without any shame. The players nearby turned to the speaker in sheer shock, but the silent tension remained unbroken. Quickly, a dozen warriors formed a tight blockade around Nyana and Yun, though neither girl showed any fear. Refusing to rush blindly into battle, Yisheng silently weighed their tactical options. One of the opposing thugs warned the crowd to stay out of their business, while his partner commanded everyone to clear out. The vicious, bitter woman snarled that anyone opposing their guild would suffer a truly painful end. Her terrifying warning sent shivers through the players who wanted to help, causing them to back off. In contrast, the beautiful Yun simply smirked, biting her lip with absolutely zero fear in her eyes, but then a soft sob. She begs the guys not to fight the faction for her sake, promising they can handle this. Our hero stands there completely frozen, his jaw practically hitting the floor. His pupils shrink to tiny pins. Around him, the crowd of loyal fans goes dead silent. Honestly, who could have seen this wild claim coming? Her brother aggressively demands to know the truth, forcing Huang to finally confess the entire scheme. They completely refuse to throw matches just to steal money. A dark, strange smirk creeps onto his face, totally throwing off the blue-eyed girl. Beside him, the cute girl playfully sticks her tongue out, adjusting her pink hair. Her cheeks flush a soft red as she tries to play it cool. Her beloved friends beg Yun to stop being stubborn and let her fans help her. But she gently insists that everyone should make their own choices. Our sweet goddess refuses to put anyone in danger, even though they are terrified for her. They all want to protect her, but her stubborn refusal makes things so much harder. Then that devil of a woman speaks up, bragging about the backyard garden's influence. She claims nobody would dare cross them unless they want to become their next target. Her arrogant threat immediately triggers a furious player in the crowd. He looks ready to tear this wicked woman apart right then and there. He shouts that they only play to escape stress, but they cannot let their goddess suffer. They simply cannot sit back and do nothing while she takes the fall. This sudden, bold rebellion completely shocks the leaders of the backyard garden, silencing them. They stand there totally speechless. Meanwhile, Yun just smiles softly. A deep peace fills her soul, seeing how much her supporters truly care. The leader of the resistance steps forward to deliver an incredibly crucial, eye-opening reminder. He warns that their brother-in-law is watching, and cowardice is not an option. Yashing turns pale as a ghost, utterly shocked by the terrifying news he just received. He almost passes out from shock, yet somehow keeps his mouth shut. Watching his intense panic, Nana giggles softly behind her hand, narrowing her eyes sweetly. The angry manager barks orders for the clan brothers to surround their rivals. An ally quickly urges them to retreat because they are completely outnumbered. Retreat is the only option. The furious villainess warns them to think twice before making an enemy of her guild. She calls any attack an act of war, but honestly, nobody gives a damn. The massive crowd of angry players decides to trap their enemies inside this secret mirror zone. They refuse to let them leave, while our hero pins the angry devilies down. He presses her hard against the wall as a player vows to crush her faction. They will tear it down, and Lu does not even need to step in.